Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Proved a Quirk Isn't Everything? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Amida Nakamura had a very important meeting today and it was making him anxious. He hoped that it was for a promotion at the accounting firm he had been with for over 5 years now, but the paranoid part of him was whispering that he was being laid off. This anxiety had built up over the night and now here he was, standing on the sidewalk with others needing to get to work, a tight smile and a coffee clutched tightly in his grip. The villain fight holding them up was not helping his mental state. The more his mind churned and came up with reasons why his boss wanted to have a private meeting with him, the more his quirk was building up inside, ready to explode. Just as he took out his phone to text his boss that he might be late, the heroes finally took down the gigantic villain. "See," he muttered as the ground vibrated, and he dropped his phone. Before he could bend down and grab it, a smaller figure beat him to it. "Here you go," a boy in a Gakurin uniform said with a cheerful smile, and Amida couldn't help but smile back. "Thank you." As he took the phone back, their hands touched and Amida felt a calm wash over him. He closed his eyes to enjoy the tranquility before snapping them open in panic when he realized what had happened. "Sheet. Kid? Hey kid," he yelled, looking through the crowd, but he couldn't catch sight of the boy as people had begun to move. Well, Amida hoped his quirk wouldn't mess up the boy's day. It was called confidence boost, but it could be devastating depending on a person's personality. The more anxious Amida became, the more confident the next person he touched would be. It usually took 8 to 12 hours for his quirk to wear off. The confidence that Amida's quirk made was real, but to feed that confidence, another emotion had to be the energy supply. It varied from person to person, but it was always came from the emotional state they felt the most. Angry people became charismatic. Depressed people became the life of the party. Happy people turned into hot-blooded brawlers. As for kind people, they became downright ruthless. By the time Amida made it to work and discovered he was getting a promotion, Midoriya Izuku was feeling the full effect of his quirk. Izuku's homeroom class was a rowdy bunch. Their teacher, Iwamoto-sensei, was a middle-aged man who had given up on corralling his class into behaving 5 seconds into their first day. Yelling, quirk usage and other brazen behavior was the norm. The man did not care and was counting down the days to his retirement. He was not a teacher that students looked up to, nor was he one they feared. He wasn't interested in his students' personal lives, social status, or much else. So when he said, "Midoriya also wants to go to Yui," it was not malicious. It was an offhanded remark that slipped out without a thought because he was stating a fact. But Iwamoto's students knew when there was blood in the water, and Midoriya was, more often than not, the prey bleeding out. He did not mean to call attention to Midoriya as he had, but he made no effort to stop the derisive laughter or Bakugu's screaming as he slammed explosive fists onto Midoriya's desk. "Still, after all this time, you're still trying to compete with me? Wake up and realize how worthless you are, Deku." This was a scene that had played out 1,000,000 times in this classroom, and each time Midoriya would stutter out his defense in a timid voice barely heard among the snickering of his classmates. This time was different. This time, Midoriya looked past Bakugo, past everyone laughing, and locked eyes with Iwamoto. And Midoriya smiled. "Iwamoto-sensei," he called out, ignoring Bakugo's growls at being ignored. Iwamoto mentally prepared for whatever complaint was about to come out of the boy's mouth. "You look tired and it doesn't seem like you have much planned for today. I'll take it from here. I have a lesson in mind that I think everyone will benefit from." That was not what Iwamoto expected Midoriya to say, and neither did the rest of the class if the loud burst of laughter meant anything. What could a useless Deku like you teach me? Or anyone?" Bakugo asked, cracking his knuckles. Midoriya let out an annoyed sigh and turned his attention to him. "Bakugo, I've known you for most of my life. I know your quirk inside and out because I'm your most frequent test subject. My lesson will help put some things into perspective for everyone trying out for a hero school. By the time I'm done, I think we'll all know who in this class should try out and who should sit out. The way he smiled as he said that last part killed the laughter a bit as some of his classmates began to shift uneasily. Bakugo looked taken aback perhaps because Midoriya hadn't called him Kaken. With a scoff of disbelief, he stalked back to his desk, kicking at his chair before throwing himself into his seat. Iwamoto decided this had gone on long enough. Very funny, Midoriya, but I do have a lesson planned. And don't comment on others' appearances, it's rude, he scolded, trying to gain back control of his classroom. He expected his student to timidly apologize, but the kid heaved a heavy sigh and stood up. Iwamoto-sensei, I think you've misunderstood something, I wasn't asking. The lesson has already started. First lesson you learn when you're quirkless is this: the truth is rude, cruel, and will constantly be shoved in your face. You look tired, sensei, so please sit down. Midoriya. I don't know what's gotten into you, but dash. It's because you look so tired, sensei, that I'm going to ignore that you broke student confidentiality by telling everyone that I applied to Yui. Midoriya spoke over him. He didn't yell or raise his voice, but it still stomped out his teachers with quick, brutal efficiency. Iwamoto felt the color drain from his face. That was I apologize. I wasn't thinking, but it's really not important in the long run. He trailed off, internally wincing at how weak that sounded. The way Midoriya looked at him with a quick upturn of his lip made Iwamoto realize that this student could also smell blood in the water and knew how to find the source. I disagree, sensei. I think it's very important. Because, if you're breaking confidentiality because you weren't thinking, what else are you saying that you contractually agreed to not speak about? Midoriya tilted his head and pulled out his phone and began to scroll. This isn't the first time, you know? You also told everyone I was quirkless on the first day of school, as well as commenting on some of my grades I've gotten this year. As your student, I don't feel comfortable knowing that you're talking about my personal information so carelessly. This is a very serious matter. I'm afraid if you can't give me a better reason, I'll have to issue a complaint. Iwamoto tried to hide his relief. Issuing a complaint to the principal wouldn't hurt his career or reputation. That man would never believe Midoriya. The school board is pretty strict on these things. I heard a teacher from another school was let go very quickly for giving out a student's phone number. The school board? Iwamoto squeaked as his panic returned like a tidal wave. Midoriya looked up from his phone with a bored look. Of course, I can't take it to a higher authority here. There would be a bias since they know you personally. Here it is. Thank you, Nico-san. I knew someone would post this. The student in question flinched and hid his phone as Midoriya pressed play and Iwamoto's words rang out over some weird dubstep music. Midoriya also wants to go to Yui. Midoriya also wants to go to Yui. Midoriya also wants to go to Yui. It went on in an endless loop until Midoriya paused it. The class had gone silent. Several students tried to stealthily put their phones away. Evidence is everywhere, since even if Nico-san deletes his video, it's already been liked, shared, and saved. Midoriya looked at Nico with something akin to disappointment. Tagging it #quirklesskid-gets-schooled makes you sound like you're in primary school, especially since you posted it to an anti-quirkless group. If you're going to bully me on the internet, just tag that you want me to die like everyone else. By the way, hero schools are allowed to check social media accounts, so for anyone applying, you might want to do some cleanup. I'd hate to be the reason you don't get in. A garbled noise came out of the back of Nico's throat, was one of regret, and he hunched into his school uniform in a sad attempt to disappear. A few kids looked shaken at the information, but Midoriya had already turned back to Iwamoto, smiling. Please know that I have other instances like this saved and documented. Your teaching career is as good as over if I take this up like I should. He didn't mention that he also had evidence on his classmates, but from their frightened glances, he didn't need to. But if you let me teach for the remainder of home PRD, I'll forget all about it. Iwamoto was beginning to fear that smile. I'll forget all about the times you've slipped up because I understand, sensei. I get it. You're tired and so am I. Midoriya moved to the side of his desk and with a small bow, gestured to his chair. Please take a seat and rest. Iwamoto sat down. The class had become deathly silent by the time Midoriya reached the blackboard. Grabbing a piece of chalk, he wrote on the board, "What makes a hero?" He turned to his classmates. "I've been thinking about this question for a long time. Probably since I was 4. I think I know the answer, but I'm curious about what everyone else thinks." Heroes are so ingrained in our society that they often overlap into other industries, so sometimes I think the definition of what a hero is has become a bit murky. What do you guys think? What makes a hero? Typical middle school replies came back to him, trickling before becoming a flood. A strong quirk. Personality. No one wants a boring hero. That's true. Can't get into the spotlight if you're not interesting. You have to look good or have a cool costume. You also need to be good with the public. Remember that one hero who retired early because they couldn't stop stuttering on a live stream? Memes for days. Midoriya listened and wrote down everyone's thoughts, which boiled down to a strong quirk, an interesting personality, good-looking and/or unique costume. Okay, for the sake of time, let's leave it at these 3 since that's what I'm hearing the most. He turned back to the class and zeroed in on one person. So now that we agree that these traits make a hero, how do you plan on becoming one Ito-san? Ito, who was known for popping his eyes out to scare the girls in their class, jerked in surprise at being called out. "What? You applied to a hero school, right?" Midoriya asked, and Ito nodded. "So, based on our criteria of what makes a hero, what's your plan to stand out? What are you going to do to make them want you?" That is. Ito trailed off, a red flush creeping up his neck as he began to hear giggles throughout the class. Irritated, he snapped back, "At least I have a quirk and a chance. No hero school is going to allow a quirkless kid in." Midoriya heaved a heavy sigh. "Ito-san," he began slowly, as if he was talking to a small child, "I'm not in this equation. The strong quirk kicks me out automatically. Please try to keep up. Also, this isn't about my future, it's about yours, and I would like to know how you plan to prove that popping your eyeballs out makes you hero material." More giggles kicked up around the room. Well, that is. I can use them to spy on villains. But they're still connected to your optic nerve, right? How far can you extend them? A foot maybe? Came the weak response, and Midoriya raised an eyebrow. "So you think you can spy on villains with only 12 inches to work with? Don't you think they would notice an eyeball or 2 lying around? And what if you're discovered? What then? How quickly can your eyes go back into their sockets? How is your quirk going to help you if you have to fight? I could throw my eyes at them. People always freak out when I do that. Then I can knock them out with a sucker punch to the face." Ito exclaimed with pride, flexing one of his biceps. Midoriya laughed. He laughed long and loud to the point that everyone was becoming uncomfortable. After what felt like an eternity, his laughter slowed into chuckles, and he wiped the tears from his eyes. Ito-san, I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh at you, but are you being serious? Is that really your plan for when you have to fight?" "Yes." Midoriya's expression became one of pity. "Ito-san, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I hope you picked out a normal high school as your second choice because no hero school is going to take you in. You don't know that. Your optic nerves are probably stronger than most, but they're not made of steel. It would be ridiculously easy to beat you, even I could do it." "Yeah, right. As if a quirkless nobody like you could dash. All I would need to do is grab your optic nerve and pull." Midoriya said with a straight face, and Ito paled as gruesome images materialized in his head. "I imagine it wouldn't take much, and even if pulling didn't work, collateral damage from fights guarantees something sharp will be around, so I could just cut them. Actually, I don't even need to go that far. I could just crush your eyeballs. Then you wouldn't have eyes or a quirk." Midoriya's smile would probably be in Ito's nightmares. "So, Ito-san, please rethink your strategy or don't bother with the entrance exam at all." Somebody laughed as Ito's shoulders slumped in defeat, and Midoriya snapped his head and zeroed in on them with a frightening accuracy that matched the manic smile growing on his face. Mika-san. I was wondering who should go next. Thank you for volunteering." Mika hiccuped in fear. And that's how the rest of the class went, with Midoriya dissecting most of his classmates' quirks and personalities. It was a psychoanalyzation that none of them had woken up expecting, and it showed. Suzuki-san, mutant-type quirks don't get a lot of sponsorship offers. How are you going to combat that if you want to be a limelight hero? Kuwabara-san, how do you plan to use the spikes growing out of the top of your head to rescue civilians? Kato-san, you have a quiet personality. How are you going to stand out from the rest when you have a hard time with public speaking? It occurred to Iwamoto a little too late that Midoriya was using the list the class had made earlier to turn the tables on them. Swallowing his fear that he was about to lose his career, Iwamoto stood up before Midoriya could sink his teeth into the 3 students left. Stop, Midoriya. You have terrorized your classmates enough. Telling them all sorts of awful things, how could you say those things to them? I don't know what's gotten into you today, but enough is enough. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Midoriya's next victim, Eiko, mouth. Thank you, sensei, as Midoriya turned to him. That's an interesting way of putting it, sensei. But I don't think I terrorized anyone. Excuse me? Then what would you call the last hour? Midoriya leaned against the podium, tapping his chin. An eye-opener? A wake-up call? We've all got big dreams, and I've been told by everyone in this room that my mind is unattainable. That I should be realistic and pick something else. It's been scrawled onto my desk, clawed into my clothes and burned into my skin. So I thought. He trailed off, quiet for a moment before looking up and giving everyone a cheerful smile. I thought since everyone has been so kind to bring me back down to reality time and time again, it was only fair I return the favor at least once. But don't worry, sensei. This definition they decided on for a hero is wrong. They missed a major component. And that is why I don't believe anyone here is qualified. Underneath the list he added, having morals. See, the previous descriptors can apply to villains, celebrities, models, CEOs, and a bunch of other professions. But a hero? A real hero has to care. They have to care about those weaker than them. It's not just about flashy battles and arresting villains. It's about calming people down after a disaster. It's about reassuring desperate people that they're not alone. It's about giving civilians a sense of safety and trust. Midoriya stared his class down. As a quirkless person, not one person in this class has ever made me feel safe. Every day I feel like I'm walking in here to be eaten alive. In the future, if one of you does become a hero and you have to save me, would you? Silence. And that's why no one here is qualified to be a hero, sensei. Bakugu's palms crackled. Iwamoto pointed to the door. Principal's office. Now. Midoriya shrugged, grabbed his stuff, and as he stepped out the door, he turned back and gave everyone a sweet smile. I know it's a long way off, but good luck on your entrance exams, everyone. I hope this lesson is one you remember when they come around. The sound of door shutting echoed and the class listened as Midoriya's footsteps faded away. Sensei, someone said, sounding weak in the tense air. Can I change my school choices? Iwamoto sighed. For some reason, an old joke popped into his head. It was older than dirt, but it had stood the test of time. 14-year-olds are the meanest people in the world. They will make fun of you, but in an accurate way. They will get to the thing that you don't like about you. They don't even have to look at you for long. Apparently they can smell the weakness of other 14-year-olds too. He couldn't help but think as he took in the frightened, desperate gazes of his students. Midoriya had done a number on them, and himself if he was being honest. Anyone who wants to make changes, do it now. They haven't been recorded yet, so you have time. The desperate scribbling of pencils on paper sounded like thunder in his ears. Principal Akashi, Midoriya Izuku is here. His secretary's voice crackled through the speaker in his office. Akashi frowned. She sounded uneasy, but it was hard to tell through the static. Send him in, he replied as he reread the email Iwamoto had sent him regarding the situation. It baffled him because the behavior described did not sound like something Midoriya would do. True, the boy was often in trouble for distracting his peers with his mumbling and jealous behavior, but he was timid. A quirkless boy like him would never have the guts nor intellect to blatantly break down his classmates' quirks the way the email described. Yet, he also couldn't think of a reason why Iwamoto would lie, and with this being Bakugu's last year here, Akashi wanted everything to go smoothly. It wouldn't do for weird rumors about Aldra nor its students to spread when one of their most talented was about to go on to study at UE. He'll hear Midoriya out and then deal out an appropriate punishment. Just think on it, okay, Mrs. Yuki? I think it would really help strengthen your quirk. Akashi heard Midoriya say as his door was opened. He caught sight of his secretary's face and wondered what the boy had said to her. She looked as pale as her surname. "Hello, Midoriya-kun," he said as the boy took a seat across from him. "Principal Akashi." Midoriya gave him a small nod in return. "Do you know why you're here, Midoriya?" Akashi asked, preparing himself for the tears and denial. Uemoto-sensei said I was torturing my classmates, but that isn't true, sir." It was said so casually, as if he was talking about the weather. "Oh." Midoriya nodded, looking more relaxed than Akashi had ever seen him. "Everything I said was true. My intent wasn't to bring anyone who wants to be a hero down, but to ground them to reality. To show them where their limits are, so to speak." Akashi sighed. The email was making a little more sense now. Apparently Midoriya's jealousy overrode his shy nature today. It's not your place to tell your classmates what they can or cannot do with their futures. Aspiring to be a hero is an admirable dream for anyone. An admirable dream for anyone but me. Isn't that what you mean? Akashi froze, startled at the curt accusation. Be reasonable, Midoriya. I know life hasn't been fair to you, but you have to be realistic about your own future and leave others alone. Now, about your punishment for disrupting class dash. You know, Principal Akashi, your plan never made sense to me. Midoriya said, scratching his head. Akashi frowned. I'm not sure what you're talking about, and don't interrupt me while I'm talking to you. I'm talking about your plan to make Aldera more respectable by using Bakugo's fame once he becomes a pro. It just doesn't make sense to me. I understand you want to give your most talented student the best you can, but sacrificing weaker students to feed his ego, that seems wrong, don't you think? Now see here, Midoriya. Akashi sputtered, face red. I have never done such a thing, and Bakugo hasn't done anything to deserve such slander from you. Oh. It was said softly, in a sweet lilting way, but there was something about it. It made Akashi think of a razor blade wrapped in velvet. Midoriya rolled up his sleeves and leaned forward in his chair until his elbows were on Akashi's desk. There were faint scars across his forearms. One was shaped like a handprint. The burns say otherwise, as do the scorch marks on my desk and the smoke that sticks to my uniform. He's still young, Midoriya. Accidents happen. I'm sorry if his explosions hurt you, but he can't control the strength of his quirk yet. Akashi said, trying to do some damage control before Midoriya got any ideas. Midoriya gave him a look of disbelief and sat back. If Bakugo can't control his quirk after having it for over a decade, then I guess he's not as talented as you think he is. Midoriya. And if you knew that, then you should have arranged for a quirk counselor to work with him. Not let him run wild and hurt people whenever he feels like it. I just meant that he probably gets excited when roughhousing. Akashi explained, desperate to take back control of the conversation. That is still a sign of poor control. This boy. Akashi withheld an aggravated groan. We are not discussing this further. We are discussing your punishment for being so rude to your classmates. I think 2 weeks of detention and extra cleaning duty should suffice, and I'm being lenient with you. I still don't understand your plan. Midoriya. Where did All Might attend middle school, Principal Akashi? Midoriya asked, and he came up short, not expecting the question. That is Dash, he stuttered, trying to get out an answer. You don't know. What about Endeavor? Or Best Jeanist? Can you name the middle school of any ranking hero? I don't think you can. No, why, Principal Akashi? He was beginning to understand Iwamoto's warning about Midoriya's smile. When had it become so terrifying? Because it doesn't matter. No one looks at a hero and goes, wow. I wonder where they went to middle school. No, they look up where they went to high school because that's where they trained to be heroes. Midoriya continued on, still smiling, still looking soft. Gentle, as if his words weren't daggers hitting their target's dead center. What? Do you think Bakugo is going to give this school a shout-out if he goes pro? Do you think people will look up to you or something if he does? You might not be here even if such a thing were to pass. This school might not be open anymore. We're on the list of schools to be condemned in the next 3 years. Don't speak ill of the school. Akashi managed to croak out. I'll stop when the roof is fixed and the floor tiles stop coming undone. There's a betting pool on when the rail on the second floor stairway is going to fall off. Yeah, Akashi and the teachers had a bet on that too. But Midoriya didn't need to know that. I know the school is well lived in, but that's just how it is with all the budget cuts. I don't know how you know about the condemned list dash. I follow the school board's social media. But again, it doesn't concern you. Akashi sighed. It seems you have a trend of putting your nose in the business of others today. In all fairness, they were in mind first. If you want to be mad at someone, be mad at Iwamoto-sensei for telling everyone I'm trying for Yui. Still? I thought I advised you heavily against trying. You did. So did my classmates, but you never seemed to mind when they told me to give up. I know you've heard their, encouraging words to me a few times. Don't be upset that they're concerned for you. A fun way to interpret those interactions. And wrong. Regardless, it's none of their business and ultimately it's Yui's call on if I get in. Not my classmates, not my teachers and not yours. Akashi really looked, at the student sitting across from him. There was no tension in his body, his eyes were slightly narrowed and his mouth was set in a firm line. He didn't look upset, more like he was slightly inconvenienced that he was having this conversation at all. Akashi wondered where the nervous boy he was familiar with went. I'm sure Iwamoto-sensei didn't mean to call you out like that, but that doesn't give you the right to talk to your classmates like you did. Midoriya was silent and Akashi withheld a sigh of relief. Normally it wasn't so hard to get through to this student. Let's agree to disagree. Speaking of rights, let's talk about mine since we're here. Akashi groaned. Midoriya, please. Principal Akashi, I don't think you understand the situation you're in. The boy gave him an assessing look. I wonder, have for some time actually, why are you so focused on Bakugo boosting the reputation of this school when you should be focused on making sure I won't tear it down? What sort of power trip fantasy was this boy having right now? You can dress up how I've been treated by my peers and teachers all you like, but we all know what's going on. Frankly, I'm tired of being a punching bag and I'm tired of you sweeping it under the rug simply because I don't have a quirk. I'm tired of people using their quirks on me because they're bored or frustrated. I'm tired of getting scolded by teachers and punished for things I haven't done. Mostly, I'm tired of being looked upon as lesser for something I cannot control. Midoriya clapped his hands and smiled. Razors in velvet went through Akashi's head again and dread filled his stomach. You might have forgotten that the Quirkless Protection Act is still an active law, but I haven't and neither has the school board. Oh no! Akashi thought before his mind went blank with panic. That act was old, had been made when the quirkless still outnumbered the quirked. In the beginning it was a bias law that unfairly favored quirkless people. Nowadays, though minor adjustments had been made to it, it was one of the few lifelines a quirkless person had in the world. I know a lot of people don't take it seriously, but the school board does. One of the members has a quirkless child around my age. So trust me when I say that if I make a complaint to them about this, it won't be ignored. And if they determine Aldra has ignored it, well, budget cuts will be the least of your worries. Midoriya leaned back and pet his head. I wonder if Aldra could afford the legal fees if this went to court. Oh shit. Akashi thought, trying desperately to think up a rebuttal. Midoriya kept talking. I know that, technically, there's no evidence of any mistreatment towards my person here. The cameras don't work and it's not like you're handing out detentions to anyone but me, so there's not a paper trail to follow. Akashi felt he could breathe a little easier at that confession. No evidence. It would turn this into he said she said situation with no clear winner. Aldra could survive that. But my classmates really love posting on social. Look. A phone was shoved in Akashi's face, with a popular app opened. A play button was pressed and he watched. Video after video of Midoriya being teased, taunted and harassed for all to see. Aldra might have been able to claim ignorance if most of the videos weren't filmed in classrooms with teachers looking on and doing nothing. Midoriya took his phone back. Now that you've seen how concerned my classmates and teachers are for me, let's discuss what's going to happen from here on out. Principal Akashi withheld a whimper and nodded. Midoriya must have seen something in his expression because he began to laugh. Don't look so frightened, sir. I'm not going to ask for anything that can't be easily granted. I just want a little respect, a little equality so that the rest of my time here at Aldra can be peaceful. You look like I'm blackmailing you into compliance and that kinda hurts, you know? Midoriya frowned. Do you think I'm blackmailing you? You've given me much to think about. That's all. Midoriya hummed. I guess I have. Remember, Principal Akashi, it can only be called blackmail if the person being threatened knows their actions aren't ethical or legal. But we both know my mistreatment at this school was done out of naive ignorance and that it's going to change right now, isn't it? Since we still have so much time left, why don't we go over my permanent record first? I think there are a few, misunderstandings that need to be corrected. The smile Midoriya flashed him was going to be in his nightmares. Akashi gave a stiff nod and with shaky fingers, pulled the file up on his computer. In the end, Midoriya Izuku did not receive any punishment for his actions that morning. Since he was a model student and this was a first offense, a verbal warning and nothing more was issued. It was an open secret that Midoriya ate his lunch in an empty classroom on the second floor, which is exactly where Bakugo and his two cronies found him. Oi, Deku! Bakugo snarled as he slammed a hand onto Midoriya's desk, causing his lunchbox to fall. Rice and vegetables spilled to the floor, along with an ice pack and an unopened carton of milk. What the hell was that this morning? Since when did you have a backbone? Midoriya finished chewing before he spoke. You owe me a new lunch. I'd demand yours, but I know how spicy your curry is. Just give me some money and we'll call it even, he said with a click of his tongue, ignoring the questions aimed at him. Smoke began to rise from Bakugo's clenched fist and the two boys behind him began to laugh. Oh wow. I never knew you were such a comedian, Mido. Daichi said as he extended a finger to poke Midoriya's cheek. All throughout our childhood you were just a big crybaby. Midoriya caught the finger and squeezed. Hey, ow. Stop, that hurts. Daichi yelped as he pulled his finger back. I wondered if your quirk increased your bone density. Guess not. Touch me again and I will break your fingers. Midoriya told him before turning to the other. What about you, Eiko? Is there something you'd like to say to me? No. Then why are you guys bothering me? We're not friends and I don't want to be associated with petty thieves. Midoriya said as he opened up his notebook. Bakugo snatched it off the desk, glaring. Who are you calling a thief? Midoriya scowled right back. Them because they've been banned from all the local arcades for it and you for taking my notebook. Give it back. Bakugo smirked. Sure thing, Death. Here. He let off an explosion and tossed the burnt book onto the desk. Everyone else might be wetting their breaths from your little stunt earlier, but I'm not. I'm the best and I have the strongest quirk in this whole school. Getting into Yui will be easy. So I'm going to tell you one last time, give up. A quirkless nobody like you has no right to even think about competing with me. You're a pebble on my road to greatness, not even worth glancing at. Midoriya looked at his burnt notebook. Then to Bakugo. He let out an annoyed groan and ran a hand through his hair. Bakugo, why are you so obsessed with me? It's becoming uncomfortable. Tiny explosions were set off. What? I'm not obsessed with you. I don't care what you do with your shitty life. You're not even competition for me, he shrieked. If that was true, then you wouldn't be trying to stop me from applying to Yui. Midoriya shot back. He kinda has a point. Daichi said softly, still rubbing his finger. Shut up, extra. If I'm not competition then you shouldn't have to worry about me passing the entrance exam. Midoriya shook his notebook, frowning as ashes fell to meet his lost bento. If I'm a pebble then stop looking at me. Worry about yourself, leave me alone, and stay out of my business. He took his phone out and proceeded to ignore them. Bakugo's rage meter hit the limit. He looked like he was on the verge of screaming before a thought crossed his mind. He gave Midoriya a vicious grin. You're all talk. I've known you your whole life and this act of yours is pathetic. I'll admit your creepy notes might help you a little, but they won't get you into you. Do everyone a favor and take a swan dive off the roof. Maybe you'll get a quirk in your next life. Dude! Eiko exclaimed looking around. If a teacher heard you say that. Bakugo didn't reply. He was busy looking at Midoriya, waiting for the hurt to fill up those green eyes, waiting for the tears and muffled sobs. Midoriya looked back, eyes dry. Not a hint of pain in them. After a pause, he spoke. Okay. The other three sputtered. What? Bakugo screamed. Are you crazy? Oh God, we are going to be in so much trouble. Eiko ummed. Like hell we are. Let's get out of here. Daichi yelped as they took off down the hall, leaving Bakugo to fend for himself. Midoriya began to move, talking as he packed up his things up and began cleaning up the mess on the floor. It's perfect, really. If I jump from the roof, Aldra gets scrutinized and fined for having a quirkless student commit suicide. He looked at Bakugo and grinned. And you lose your chance at becoming a hero. I'll even make sure to leave this with my suicide note in which you will be mentioned many times. Like this morning, a voice came out of Midoriya's phone. Take a swan dive off the roof. Bakugo stiffened at hearing his own voice. He wasn't an idiot. He knew that at this moment Midoriya was holding his future in his hands. Not even the principal could help him out of this one. I'll make sure your mom will be first to hear it so she can realize what an awful person you've become. I'll make sure she forces you to look my mom in the eye as you tell her every awful little thing you've done to me. Even the things you don't remember. I'll write them all down for you as one last favor. Bakugo felt an ample amount of sweat gathering in his palms and, for once, it wasn't from anger. Don't joke like that, Deku. Then don't tell me to kill myself. Midoriya snapped back. Actions have consequences, Kaken, even for you. I have always thought you were amazing. Ever since we were kids, I knew you could become a great hero. But this? Mocking me every day, calling me worthless, destroying my things, what kind of hero do you think you are, acting like that? Because lately, Midoriya trailed off, looking dazed. Lately you've been nothing but a villain to me. Bakugo choked a little, eyes widening, unable to believe that Midoriya Izuku had said such a thing to him. And right to his face. I was being serious. This morning when I said you need to care about those weaker than you if you want to be a real hero. People don't look up to All Might just because he's strong, they look up to him because he makes them feel safe. You don't do that. Midoriya smiled and it was bitter. We're not friends. I know that, and while I have been friendly towards you in the past, I'm done trying to be your friend again. I admire you and what you can do, but when you got mad this morning when everyone else joined in, I decided enough is enough. I don't owe you anything except a few punches to the face for all the shit you've put me through. Midoriya glanced at Bakugo's hands. I didn't get to your quirk this morning. I would just to dump water on you or spray you with a fire extinguisher. There isn't a public building that doesn't have one, so it'd be easy to find. If I really wanted to take you out permanently, I'd knock you unconscious and cut your hands off, or just kill you while you're out cold. You have a strong quirk, but I wasn't joking. That's not enough, Kaken. If you don't care about people, especially those weaker than you, then you have no right to call yourself a hero. It was more on instinct than intent, but Bakugo swung, fist already sizzling. Midoriya dodged, which wasn't unusual, but Bakugo was surprised when his arm was slammed onto the desk and his explosion died prematurely, covered in a suffocating cold. Deku had smacked his ice pack on top of his hand. I told you I was done, Kaken, he sounded sad. Things will be changing around here. I'm not going to be some punching bag you can use when you're mad. Seriously, for your own sake, leave me alone. If you keep harassing me, I will send that voice recording to you. Midoriya let him go. Bakugo didn't move, still stunned that a FING ice pack had killed off his attack. Swaying a little, Midoriya walked towards the door, yellow backpack slung on one shoulder. Don't worry. About the suicide, I won't actually kill myself. I respect myself too much to listen to you, and I wouldn't do such a mean thing to your mom or mine. I have better things to do. I have dreams and you're not taking them away from me. I'll see you later. The room was silent. DMN, Deku. Bakugo muttered under his breath, throwing the ice pack on the floor. What kind of quirk did you get hit with? Fucking terrifying. It had to be the influence of a quirk. People don't change overnight like that, and Bakugo did know Midoriya better than most. That's mostly why he has stayed quiet during Deku's lecture. It had been entertaining to see all those extras get put in their place. Now that Deku did the same to him, it wasn't as funny. He had a lot to think about. The rest of the school day went smoothly, though people walked softly around Midoriya. Even the teachers had been warned after a very terse email was sent out, reminding everyone about a certain law. The rumors spread fast and Midoriya seemed content at being left alone, if not looking a tad sluggish. He nodded off in his last class but wasn't scolded. A collective sigh of relief was heard when the final bell rang. The thing about confidence boost was that as it wore off, it was like coming down from an adrenaline rush. It could leave one feeling tired and irritable. So tired and done with everything mood, if you will. Which sums up what Midoriya was feeling when he walked through a tunnel on his way home. Because he was more focused on trying to stay awake and not trip over his own feet, he was an easy target for a villain hiding right beneath the manhole cover he had passed. Before he could blink, slime loosely wrapped around him, slowly tightening as a bulging eye and grinning mouth looked at him. "Don't worry, kid. I'm just going to be taking over your body for a little bit. It'll be painful for about 45 seconds, ow." Midoriya wiggled one arm free and poked the villain in the eye. "No." The villain yelped, letting him go and reforming a few feet away, rubbing his injured eye. "Don't be stingy. It won't take long, oof." Midoriya flung his backpack into the face of adversity. It seemed to work. "No," he repeated as the villain reformed again, looking angry. "I'm going to enjoy suffocating you, you little dash." The villain's words were cut off as a powerful force came up from the manhole. A gale of wind ripped through the tunnel and scattered the villain's body. "Do not worry. I am here," All Might exclaimed with his signature smile. "Thank you for keeping him occupied, young man. I'm sorry you had to get involved, oh dear." His smile turned into a nervous frown. The air pressure from his dramatic entrance had defeated the villain, but it had also knocked the boy into a wall, causing him to pass out. No concussions, please don't have a concussion." All Might whispered fervently under his breath as he worked quickly to collect the sludge villain in a plastic bottle, and keep an eye on the boy at the same time, hoping he would wake up soon. All Might couldn't just leave him, but his time was running out. This boy was not the first person Yagi had accidentally knocked out, but it had been a while since he had messed up this badly. So when the boy's eyelids began to flutter after only a few minutes of being still, Yagi silently thanked his lucky stars. "Thank goodness you're awake." Yagi sighed, keeping up his grin as the boy blinked a few times before sitting up with a groan. "Are you all right?" The boy clutched at his head and looked around in confusion before setting his gaze on Yagi. His eyes widened and his eyebrows went up in shock. "Oh my God. Why, am I dreaming?" he stuttered, pointing a shaking finger at Yagi. Being in his hero persona, Yagi was used to this reaction. "Your eyes do not deceive you, young man. I must thank you for helping me take down this villain." He held up the bottles he had trapped the villain in. "I apologize that I took so. This isn't my usual patrol area, so I got turned around, but that's no excuse for negligence." The boy just stared at him. There was a small awkward silence and Yagi saw some sort of epiphany flash through green eyes. "I was knocked out by All Might," the boy whispered under his breath and Yagi withheld a wince. "Yes, sometimes my attacks can be a bit dash." "Awesome." It was said with the same reverence and wonder Yagi had felt when he was offered one for all. He made an effort not to let any confusion show on his face. Perhaps the boy did have a concussion because that was not a normal reaction to getting knocked out by a hero's attack and... Seeing the grin spread across that freckled face, Yagi realized he was dealing with a true fanboy. Normally this type of person could be a bit difficult to deal with, but this time he felt relief. No concussion, no hospital bills sent to his agency, no one to yell at him for being careless. "Wow. You even signed my notebook." "Thank you," the boy exclaimed as he stood up. "Of course. Anything for a fan. Now, I really must get going. Please continue to support me," Yagi said, giving his fan one last grin and a thumbs up. As he turned and began to gear up for a long-distance jump, he just barely heard over the wind. "Wait, there's something I need to ask you, Dash." Yagi landed on a roof a few seconds later with a little barnacle of a boy attached to his leg. Of all the reckless things. Child, I do not have time to talk with you. I am on patrol right now. Yagi scolded as the boy let go. He turned away, heart racing because he felt his time was quickly running out, and despite how annoyed he was, he did not want to yell at the boy. I know and I am sorry, but I will never get another chance to ask. Just answer one question and I will never bother you again, the boy said, sounding strangely composed for someone who probably just discovered what a roller coaster without seatbelts or a seat would feel like. I need to know, do you think a quirkless person can become a hero? Yagi turned around, surprised, and discreetly wiped at the dribble of blood that had welled up around the corner of his lip. Can a quirkless dash? Yagi never finished his sentence because One for All decided it was done for the day. Once the smoke cleared, his civilian form was in full view of a terribly curious child. Oh, the boy blinked a few times but showed no other signs of surprise. I wasn't expecting that, but I guess that makes sense. What? Yagi coughed up some blood and the boy gave him a handkerchief. How kind. If the boy hadn't just hitched a ride on Yagi's breathed leg, causing the situation, he would have been touched by the thoughtfulness. Well, All Might is the most popular hero in Japan, but no one sees him outside his patrol times. I thought you just ran really fast when you didn't want to talk to people, but a second form makes more sense. Listen, you can't tell anyone about this. Yagi sighed as he sat down. He lifted his shirt, showing the boy his injury, and explained what was essentially a national secret to a middle schooler. One that was apparently sassy enough to point that out. While I always appreciate context, maybe you shouldn't have told me all that, the boy said, sitting next to him. You don't even know my name. I have a lot of power over you now. But Yagi wasn't number one for nothing. He looked the boy in the eyes and gave him a slightly evil smile. No one will ever believe you. The boy blinked once. Then he laughed. Yeah, you got me there. No one would believe that All Might would say something like that to a complete stranger. Not even if I had a quirk. That dampened Yagi's mood a little. About that, you asked me if I think a quirkless person can be a hero. Truthfully, I don't. Being a hero is a dangerous job with a quirk. Without one, it's just a long, drawn-out suicide. I've known so many people with amazing quirks that have died or had to go into early retirement because they faced a villain that was bad matchup for their quirk. If you're serious about helping people, try being a police officer. They get a bad rap with the public and it's a bit of a thankless job, but they help a lot people. Yagi stood up, groaning as he stretched his shoulders and made his way towards the door. It's not a bad thing to dream, but be careful not to obscure the facts, kid. Yagi said. He hated saying things like that, especially to someone who had probably faced a lot of prejudice in their young life. Yet he also felt that this was a more painless way to break that dream than later on if the boy tried for a hero school. The public ridicule if it got out after he failed would be awful. Huh, so that's what you think? Yagi stopped short at the door and looked back. The boy looked disappointed but not heartbroken. Perhaps it didn't mean as much to him as he had implied. Can I give you some advice, All Might? I know I asked for your opinion and you gave it to me, but next time a quirkless fan asks you a similar question to mine, you should lie. Or at the very least, reword it so that they're left with some sort of hope. I know what I said is harsh, but I cannot in good conscience give people false hope. What if they try? What if they fail? Yagi asked. And what if they succeed? The boy snapped back before sighing, running a hand through messy hair. Look, it's not about whether you actually believe a quirkless person can become a hero. In truth, we shouldn't need anyone's approval or opinions about our dreams. But when you're told your whole life that you're useless or that you'll never accomplish anything, when nobody thinks you can do it. He gave Yagi a helpless smile. It's nice to think that someone's in your corner. That's what I loved about you. Watching you on the screen, you are always smiling. Like no matter how bad a situation is, you find some good somewhere in it. I admire your strength, but that's not why I look up to you. His laugh was bitter and heartbroken, like there were shards of glass in his throat. You've said it so many times, anyone can be a hero if they try. And Yagi remembers. Remembers that feeling of hopelessness. Remembers the doubt in people's eyes when he said he would be a hero. He remembers the laughter and gossip behind his back and the dismissive tones of his teachers. He remembers looking at Yui's gates, wondering what god he would need to pray to, what sacrifice he would need to make just to get that chance to step inside. My boy. Earlier today, someone told me to jump off a roof and pray that I get a quirk in my next life. The boy continued on and Yagi felt his jaw drop. He knew quirkless people had it worse than in his day, but for someone to say that, and for this boy to mention it so casually, it broke his heart. Please don't. Your life is worth something and quirks aren't everything. You don't need one to live a great life. Yagi was quick to get out, realizing, belatedly, they were on a rooftop. He didn't know if he could transform in time if the boy jumped. The boy looked offended. I know that. It's everyone else that seems to think that quirks define everything. Even you. Honestly, All Might, who tells someone to become a police officer like it's some sort of consolation prize. Especially after describing it as a thankless job? What are you trying to say to me? That I deserve to be miserable because you don't think I can become a hero? That's pretty heartless. No. I believe that police do an admirable job. I think I would have applied if I hadn't made it as a hero. In no way do I believe you deserve to suffer because you're quirkless. If I don't deserve to suffer, then why is everyone hell-bent on making sure that I do? The boy asked as he began to pace. All I want is a chance to prove myself. That's it. That's all I want. I'm not asking to be a special exception. I don't want that. I just want a chance to prove myself. Your solution wouldn't work either. The police wouldn't take me for the same reason you don't think I can be a hero. Yagi wanted to say that wasn't true, but he realized the boy was probably right. Well, I guess it's not fair of me to expect you to side with me. I get where you're coming from even if I don't agree. You do. The boy stopped pacing and shrugged. We're strangers. I asked for your opinion and you gave it to me honestly. I guess I thought you'd be on my side because I've been cheering for you since I was toddler. He smiled. But you're human, and me expecting you to just agree with me because I've watched you through a screen most of my life isn't right. I thought I knew you, but I don't. I only know what you let the public see. The boy walked past Yagi and opened the door. I should take my own advice and stop listening to what everyone else thinks. Because at the end of the day, Yagi had never seen such determined and ruthless eyes. Paired with the smile on the boy's face, it caused a shudder to go up his spine. Just who was he looking at? At the end of the day, you don't know me. As the door slammed shut, an explosion went off in the distance. The situation was bad, to say the least. None of the heroes on the scene were suited to take on someone with a sludge quirk, especially not when his hostage had such a volatile and explosive quirk. Death Arms watched as the kid struggled within the villain's grasp, his hands clenched tightly at his side. If backup didn't arrive soon, they would have to prepare for the worst-case scenario. Excuse me, he heard someone mutter and tap at his arm. He took a quick glance down to see a green-haired kid looking back at him. Could you dash? Can't you see this is a serious situation? Get out of here. If you want an autograph, wait till later. Death Arms snapped, shoving the kid behind him. Civilians were becoming way too desensitized to villain attacks, he thought as he returned his focus to the situation at hand. It was clear that the hostage was losing strength but still valiantly trying to fend off the villain. Come on, kid, just hold on a little longer. Help is on the way. Death Arms whispered under his breath. Were it not for that, he might have heard a tiny sigh that held quite a bit of frustration and annoyance in its small existence. If he hadn't been so focused on the villain, he might have seen someone duck past him. Kid, what the hell are you doing? A bystander yelled, and Death Arms looked around just in time to see that same green-haired kid was a few feet ahead of him, holding a makeshift slingshot that was pulled back and loaded with a good-sized rock from the surrounding debris. Sheet! He lunged towards the kid, but the rock had already been released, and the boy took off running before he could grab him. It almost felt like everything was going in slow motion. The rock sailed gracefully through the air before smashing into the villain's eye. The sludge villain let out a shriek, and the boy darted forward and grabbed the hostage, pulling him free while the villain was distracted and in pain. Half carrying the exhausted hostage, the boy was quick to move past Death Arms just as the villain regained his composure. Looking at the crowd with his one good eye, The villain managed to find the boy and something like recognition flashed through his good eye. The boy met his gaze with a calm expression. "I told you no," he said. It came out blandly, the same way a tired parent tells a whining child they aren't getting ice cream. What was not bland was the hand gesture the boy gave the villain. "You little sheet!" He screamed and began to move their way. Death Arms moved into a defensive stance, but before the villain reached them, a booming voice echoed throughout the area. "You've schemed enough for one day, villain." As if he had appeared from thin air, All Might was there, already gearing up for an attack. "Take a nap. Detroit Smash." It was a moment for the history books. Death Arms would definitely never forget the way All Might's punch pulverized the villain and changed the weather. The hostage was with the paramedics and cleanup from the attack would take a while, but it was part of the job. Before that, though, Death Arms grabbed the shoulder of the green-haired boy as he tried to leave. "What's your name?" The boy looked exhausted. He looked at Death Arms for a long moment. He had to shake him a little to get a response. "Midoriya Izuku?" "Why?" Death Arms decided it was his duty as a hero to give this kid a wake-up call he clearly needed. "Do you have any idea how reckless that was? That boy could have died because of you. You're lucky All Might was here to save the day. What were you thinking running out like that?" Midoriya was silent, but he looked more awake. "Well, I'm waiting," Death Arms said, arms crossed. If this kid thought staying silent would get him out of a lecture, he was in for a rude surprise. "You're right," Midoriya admitted slowly, as if tasting each word before they left his mouth. It was fortunate that All Might was here to save the day. Death Arms felt his anger ebb a little. At least he was seeing sense. "Because you sure as hell weren't doing anything to help." Midoriya ended, tone sharp and on the rise. It was loud enough to gain the attention of some bystanders. "Now hold on." "No, I don't think I will." Midoriya interrupted him. "You think you have the right to lecture me? After you just stood there while someone was dying? At least the other heroes were helping with crowd control and putting out fires. What's your excuse for not acting?" Great, people were gathering and bringing out their phones. Death Arms even saw a news crew breaking away from All Might to come their way. He needed to end this quickly or this kid was going to be ridiculed to hell and back online. Hostage situations are delicate. One wrong move and it's all over. Things ended well today, but that won't always be the case when you act like you did. Midoriya looked shocked. A hostage situation? The incredulity was almost tangible. "A hostage situation?" he repeated. "Is that what we're calling murder attempts now, or did you never learn to tell the difference before becoming a hero?" "Hey, watch your tone," Death Arms yelled back. "You were reckless and could have died. You could have also caused that boy to die. He was being suffocated. He was already going to die anyway because none of you tried to help. And don't call me reckless, I tried to give you this." Midoriya threw the slingshot to the ground, "but you told me to get lost. I made it with a piece of wood that had fallen from Kamui Woods and some torn elastic. It might be from the lady, don't really know, I just found it on the ground. I thought, since you have super strength in your arms, you could take the villain out with it." Death Arms and the crowd watched as the child that was so calm and composed earlier lost himself in a rant. "But you brushed me off." "No, worse, you thought I was asking for an autograph." The boy sounded pained by that. "You have a lot of nerve calling me reckless when you just stood there. Where was this nerve when someone was literally being choked to death in front of you?" "I was a bad matchup for that villain. It was better to wait for backup." Death Arms raised his voice for people to hear. They would understand. "So having a quirk that doesn't suit the situation means you automatically get to sit out guilt-free even when a life is on the line?" Midoriya asked, and Death Arms would never admit it, but he almost took a step back because those green eyes were calling for his head on a pike. "Glad to know our taxes are being used to let heroes like you get away with negligence." Midoriya turned to the crowd. "Hey everyone. Remember, if you're ever being threatened by a villain and Death Arms arrives to help, there's a 50-50 chance he'll just stand back and wait for someone else to do his job." "Oh, for the love of Dash. That is not what I said." "Yes it is," a heckler from the crowd called out, and there was a murmur of agreement. Then break it down for me since I'm apparently too reckless and foolish to follow your higher thinking. Midoriya scoffed. Death Arms sighed, crouched down and tugged the kid closer to him so they could talk without the cameras picking up his voice. Listen, he whispered, I know you were just trying to help that kid out and that's great. But if anything had happened to either of you, the blame would have fallen on us heroes. We have rules and protocols for situations like this. This is a hard job and showing some respect is going to get you a lot farther than talking back. Midoriya stepped out of his reach and studied him. It felt like a dissection. Then, a buzzing noise filled the air. Without saying a word, Midoriya took out his phone and put it to his ear. What are you dash? Hi, Auntie. I'm glad you called. I wanted to let you know you're already here? Oh, I didn't know the news crew was filming. Death Arms watched as Midoriya turned toward the cameras that were still rolling. Hi, Mom, he exclaimed with a smile and wave before going back to his phone. Kaken's being checked out by the paramedics right now. I'm glad you're here. I don't think he should walk home, but you know how he is. No, I'm being lectured right now. It's fine, I'm not hurt. Funny though, Death Arms was just telling me there were rules about these things, but I guess being yelled at trumps making sure I'm not in shock? Oh, they filmed that? How embarrassing. He ended with a laugh and Death Arms felt dread fill his stomach, but he didn't know why. Do you want to talk to him? Midoriya asked and a shudder went up Death Arms' spine. Hell yeah, I do. Why are all you people still here? Scram. The crowd dispersed as a fierce-looking blonde woman made her way towards them, phone in hand. She smiled at Izuku and ruffled his. Thanks for helping my brat out, Izuku. I almost puked from panic when the news broke. She took a closer look at him and frowned. She kneeled down, uncaring that her designer skirt was getting dirty and ran a hand through his hair. Izuku, are you okay? You're pale and sweating. You're also breathing kind of hard, kid? She asked gently. I'm fine, Auntie. Just coming down from the adrenaline, but I really would like to go home. She studied him a moment before sighing and ruffling his hair again. I'll take your word for it, Izuku. I can take you home once Katsuki's cleared to go. Midoriya waved her off. Nah, Mom's probably already worried sick. I'll head back now. If you're sure. She trailed off before grinning as she stood up. Stop by sometime this week for dinner. It's the least I can do as thanks for helping save that kid of mine. Will do. Midoriya smiled back. Hey, wait a minute. Death Arms said as the boy walked away. I wasn't done talking to you. Oh, yes you are. The blonde woman snarled as she turned towards him and blocked his view of the kid. But don't worry, you can talk to me, seeing as I'm one of the first people that should have been contacted. So please explain to me why, with all these apparent rules and regulations, neither me nor my husband were informed of what happened today. Death Arms struggled to come up with a reply. She raised an eyebrow at him. Oh, excuse me. I thought it was obvious who I was. I'm Bakuga Mitsuki, the mother of the kid you couldn't be bothered to save. I'm also the aunt of the kid that helped save him, so you better have a DM and good explanation for your actions because I am not happy with how you've treated either of them. Death Arms' only saving grace from the verbal beatdown he was about to receive was that the cameras had stopped rolling. Meanwhile, the internet was already have a field day and the person being mocked wasn't Midoriya Izuku. Heroic ravioli at Harapeeps, 1H. I'm psing my breathes from laughter Arn. Death Arms really though it was good idea to scold a kid that helped take down a villain. Like, dude, that boy clearly doesn't fear God, why would he listen to your derpy butt? You didn't do sheet at death_arms_official. 15k retweets, 321 quote tweets, 20.8k likes. Haruka Rose at Flowerpole, 3H. OMG he waved to his What a good child, 3 less than 3 and the way he looks at Dan goes, break it down for me, oh I can't. I adore him. I aspire to have that type of sass in the face of authority. 7k retweets, 90 quote tweets, 8.1k likes. Memamai at Mame 3H. Okay, but was he wrong? Death Arms needed to get knocked off his high horse. Also the other boy's mom? The way she parted the crowd? Death Arms is toast. RIP at death_arms_official. 30k retweets, 2.1k quote tweets, 70.8k likes. In detention at Yusuki 3H. Green Boy was sleep-deprived. If Death Arms had just let him go, everything would have been fine. Oh, that's what you get for taking on a tired student. We're vicious. BS30s. 5.2k retweets, 102k quote tweets, 5.5k likes. A meme with Midoriya's deadpan stare and the words, "Break it down for me," became an overnight hit. Death Arms' startled face accompanied by the words, "That's not what I said," also became popular. Across Mizudafu, several Aldra students were staring at their phones in fear. He told off a pro hero. Nico whispered to Ito. They were at a cafe to study but had gotten distracted. Both of them wished they had focused on their homework. He told off a pro and lived. Forget that, he smashed a villain's eye. Ito whispered back, remembering the clinical teardown of his quirk that morning. If I keep my eyeballs in and don't bother him for the rest of the year, I think I'll be safe. As long as we don't mess with him, he won't mess with us, yeah? Nico looked close to tears. Ito, he talked back to a pro. He helped save Bakugo. Maybe he'll leave us alone, but even if he doesn't, you think Sensei is going to stop him? Ito thought for a moment. Sheet. Meanwhile, at a nearby bar, Iwamoto and Akashi both stared up at the large television with matching looks of disbelief. The baseball game it had been showing had been interrupted by the breaking news of a villain attack. They saw a familiar boy with green hair help pull their star student out of a villain's grasp. They watched as a hero tried to lecture Midoriya and felt a sad camaraderie with him when the boy turned the argument back on him. The game was back on now, but neither of them cared who won anymore. Was he just acting shy? For 2 whole years? If so, why give up the act now? Akashi sobbed as he laid his head on the bar. It doesn't make sense. Is it just to psychologically torture me? Let's look on the bright side. He could have been like this from the beginning. That would have been a lot worse. If I survive the next 10 months, I'm taking an early retirement. Iwamoto said as he took a shot of whiskey. As for Midoriya Izuku, he had just finished talking to his mom, assuring her that everything was fine and that she didn't need to leave work when All Might jumped in front of him. I am here, he exclaimed before coughing up blood and transforming back into his civilian form. Why? Midoriya asked irritably, rubbing at his eyes, and Yagi had the grace to look sheepish. My boy, there are some things I need to talk to you about. Yagi stopped short as Midoriya held up his hand. Today is not the day and I am not the one. If one more person who isn't my mom tries to lecture me, I do not know what will happen, but no one will be happy. Midoriya said, and Yagi noticed his skin was pale with a slight sheen to it. The bags under his eyes had gotten darker. He jerked out of his thoughts as a hand was moved in his face. Phone. I'm sorry. Give me your phone. Midoriya huffed. You have something to say to me, but it can wait, can't it? I didn't tell you earlier because I hadn't noticed myself until recently, but I'm pretty sure I've been under the effect of a quirk for most of the day. It's wearing off right now and it's a kiss. I'm crashing hard. My plan is to go home, pass out, and figure everything out tomorrow. So give me your phone so I can put in my contact info. We can meet tomorrow and then you can do, well, whatever you want, I guess. Yell at me, chide me, punch me into the atmosphere. I don't care, go for it, but tomorrow? I would never! Yagi exclaimed, aghast at the thought as Midoriya made an impatient motion with his hand. Though this wasn't how Yagi had wanted this to go, if Midoriya was right about being under the influence of a quirk, perhaps waiting to offer him one for all tomorrow would be best. There was also a few things he wanted to look into as well. He opened up his phone to the new contact section and handed it over. Midoriya was quick to add in his number and give it back, which made Yagi smile internally. The boy could have run off or tried to look through the phone but hadn't. Well, I suppose we'll meet tomorrow, Yagi said before turning back into All Might and taking off. Rest well, citizen. Midoriya heard a faint, oh my god, was that All Might? In the distance and decided to jog the rest of the way home in hopes that no more distractions or weird things would happen to him on the way. Thankfully, fate smiled upon him and granted his wish. His mom was still at work, so the house was empty when he stepped in. Taking off his shoes, he went straight to his room, dropping his backpack by his desk and collapsing onto his bed. I missed you bit. So much. I don't know why I left you this morning. You're the only one that gets me, he muttered before passing out, not even making it under the covers. As he slept, more and more people were talking about him and Death Arms. It was to the point that it caught the attention of certain individuals. Yurare is great. Teachers chat. Press _ eraser I found a mini you. Press _ attached an image of a very tired and angry looking child. Midnight. I heard about this. Poor kid was just trying to help his friend. Blood _ King. I don't know what Death Arms was thinking, but good luck to his PR team. Cementos. Well, he wasn't exactly wrong. Kids shouldn't be trying to do what that boy did. Snipe. Please don't tell me you're siding him with him. See. Cementos. I'm not. He did nothing to help, nor does it look like he or the others tried. I'll wait for the official report to come out before making my final judgment, but it's obvious he's in the wrong. Press _ he's always been that way. I wouldn't be surprised if the Hero Public Safety Commissions is just waiting to get enough evidence before they reprimand him. Blood _ sounds like something they would do. Press _ eraser I know you're on here, lurking. I need you to look at this child. I love him. I would die for him. If you had heard half of the things he said to Death Arms, you would have adopted him. For being logical. Eraser, shut up, Mike. Eraser, I have never adopted a child. There's a reason I have time this year to catch up on sleep. Midnight at Eraser, why are you lying to yourself? You're a big softy on the inside. We all know you love kids. Eraser, no I don't. Press _ Mike. Yes you do, and I don't think you fundamentally understand how sleep works. Eraser, I don't like kids and I know how sleep works. Snip face. Cementus face. Minif, lies D. Blood and face. Press _ Mike. The majority agrees. How would you like to dispute this claim, Eraserhead? Eraser, I despise all of you. As for the kid, he wasn't wrong. He tried to go to a hero before taking matters into his own hands. Time was of the essence here. None of the heroes tried to negotiate or engage with the villain. If they had tried and managed to convince him to let the boy breathe, then waiting for backup would have been the right call. The lack of teamwork should also be noted. That slingshot was a clever idea, and it's one they could have thought up if they had bothered to talk to each other. Death Arms messed up the most, but the others are also responsible for this mess. A civilian should not have felt the need to intervene, least of all a child. Press _ So you did know about the little listener. Eraser, Mike, you literally sent me memes and tweets right after it happened. Press _ Oh yeah, I did. Midnight, shame he's a minor and his name wasn't released. You could have interviewed him on your show. Netsu, I know it. Eraser, Present _ Midnight, Blood _ Snipe, and Cementos have logged off. Midoriya Izuku had caught the attention of some powerful people. It was in the middle of the night when Izuku's eyes snapped open, wide awake from a dead sleep. He rolled over and stared blankly at his ceiling as the events of yesterday washed over him. He blinked a few times before closing his eyes again, trying valiantly to go back to sleep and pretend yesterday never happened. There were many nights where Izuku had been unable to find sleep because his brain wanted to fixate. Mostly this happened when he saw a quirk being used in a creative way, but sometimes his brain would, at random, say, hey, let's revisit that embarrassing thing you did 3 years ago in excruciating detail. It would come unexpectedly. Some nights he would be on the cusp of sleep and a memory would pop into his head, fresh as the day it occurred. But this time? It was way worse because he had never had a full day of shameless behavior to reflect on before. He would never sleep again. Sign him up for the Insomnia Club because he's about to become a permanent member. Looking back on how he acted at school made him wince. It was almost like watching a movie in his mind, and it was a psychological horror if Izuku had to pick a genre. What had been going through his head to act like that? To threaten his teacher and classmates without a thought? Not to mention his meeting with the principal. Oh, he said out loud calmly. Oh no. Then he began to laugh. It was a quiet laugh. One might have even called it charming in the beginning, but as the laughter continued, hysteria bled into it. Izuku grabbed his pillow and laughed into it until he was exhausted and silence filled the room again. He didn't know what time it was, but he knew it was late and he didn't want to wake his mom up. I'm going to die, he said one last calm declaration before the panic took over. He had experienced panic attacks before, but this one was on another level. It felt like All Might and Kakin had teamed up to perform a combo attack on his heart. His breathing was becoming erratic. The next thing he knew, he was in the bathroom kneeling in front of the toilet, dry heaving. Guess it was a good thing he didn't get to eat all of his lunch. Oh my God, I'm going to die. What did I do? He mumbled, clutching at his hair. I was so rude to everyone, and I talked back Iwamoto-sensei and blackmailed the principal. He froze. I blackmailed the principal, he whispered, horrified. I'm not just going to die, they're going to expel me first. Even worse was, half the things he said to Principal Akashi were lies. He didn't know anyone on the board or if they had a quirkless child. He hadn't known Aldra was on a condemnation list. He had heard some of his teachers talking about it, but they had laughed like it was joke. All those videos from social weren't saved on his phone, and he wasn't waiting to use them as evidence. He knew about them because some of his classmates had found his account and decided to spam them at him. It hurt having it shoved in his face, but it was easier to make an alt account than try to report and ban them. They would have known it was him, and that would have made it worse. And maybe a sick, desperate part of him looked at those videos on awful nights when his anxiety was at an all-time high. Not out of masochistic intent, but searching, analyzing, trying to figure out why they acted the way they did. Why they found hurting him for being quirkless so entertaining. He never found the answer. His homeroom class was going to eat him alive for what he said about their quirks. Not that what he said was a lie, but I told Ito-san I would rip his eyes out. Izuku was horrified with himself, and tears were beginning to blind his vision. I told Kakin I would cut his hands off. Those weren't the reassuring words of a hero. Those weren't the words of someone trying to lift others up to see their highest potential. Those were the calculated words of someone aiming to bring others down. He had emotionally manipulated his classmates and used their vulnerabilities to destroy their confidence. There was a high possibility he had ended some hero careers before they even had a chance to get to the starting line. The worst part? It had felt good. I'm going to get hit with so many restraining orders, he hummed before dry heaving into the toilet again. Mentally, he apologized to his mom because she didn't raise him to act like that. And then the rest of the day. Oh God, the rest of the day. Wiping his mouth, Izuku was beginning to wonder if yesterday was a fever dream he had. Maybe he had just been delirious and sick in bed to the point of having weird hyper-realistic dreams. That would make way more sense than him actually meeting All Might, discovering his secret, saving Kakin, and talking back to Death Arms. That's all it was. A fever dream. He tries to convince himself of this new theory as he goes back to his room, ignoring that he's still in his dirty uniform. Ignoring that his mom would have taken him to the doctor if he had been that sick. Really, there was no other explanation, he thought as he looked at his phone. And promptly flung it onto his bed, panic back in full force. Izuku barely held back his shriek of surprise. Because there was no way. He picked up his phone again, hands trembling. The notification was still there. Unknown number, greetings. This is All Might. I hope you are feeling better. You seemed very tired when we last spoke. I hope the quirk wore off and that you're getting some rest. Please let me know when you would like to meet. I am free in the evenings. Izuku makes it a point not to curse if he can help it, but in this case it was warranted. What the F dash? He whispered under his breath, with feeling. What the F dash? He started to type back before realizing it was 3 a.m. and the man was probably asleep. He would reply at a reasonable hour. Like a sane person who slept through the whole night, which is what he was going to do. He changed into a fresh shirt and boxers and laid back down, totally ready to go back to sleep. He was no longer a member of the Insomnia Club. He wasn't wide awake at all. Nope, not him. And here we have a fool in its natural habitat, denial. His own mind mocked him as he stared at his dark ceiling. 5 minutes later, he gave up on sleep. Resigned, he grabs a few things he'll need like his notebook, pen, and phone. Quietly, he crept into the living room, mindful of his mother sleeping. He turned the TV on, turned the volume down low, and settled on the couch for a long night. It was a routine he had ended up developing for nights like this. When his mind was going so fast that sleep was impossible, He sat in the glow of the television, writing down everything, as the low hum of voices filtered in, soft and comforting. Episodes of an old All Might cartoon from his childhood always ran at this time, so it was a familiar background noise as his mind went on autopilot. The first thing he focused on was figuring out if he had been under the influence of a quirk yesterday, and if so, what had it done to him? The quick and dirty answer was yes, and it turned him into a psychopath, but when it comes to analysis, Izuku does not look at the surface and call it a day. He brings a shovel and he digs until he finds what he's looking for, even if he doesn't like what he finds. He wrote down everything. He remembered, trying to recall when or if he had felt a change in himself. He remembers there was a villain attack that held him and some others up that morning. Was it then? The villain had a gigantification quirk, so it wasn't them. Probably someone from the crowd, most likely touched base. Not that narrowed it down. It had been a compact crowd and his hands had brushed against more than one person. The villain attack was the only outlier in his morning routine, everything else had been the same, so he's going to take an educated guess and assume that when it happened. The next question was why? Why would someone use their quirk on him? He hadn't seen anyone he knew in the crowd, and even if he had, no one he knew had a quirk that could do that. So it was someone he didn't know and probably had skin contact with. Perhaps it had been activated on accident? There had only been adults around him, and he hadn't done anything to make himself stand out. At least, not anything that would make someone use their quirk with malicious intent. So maybe it really had been an accident? It had taken a while to stop the villain. Some people might have been worried about getting to work on time. Stress could have caused someone to lose control of their quirk. That seemed like the most plausible answer. So it was someone in the crowd, and it had probably been an accident. The most important question though was this: what did the quirk do? He had felt fine, had felt like himself on the walk to school. Maybe there had been a delayed response? Or a scenario needed to be met for it to activate. He remembers sitting at his desk as Iwamoto-sensei talked about their school choices. He remembers holding his breath when his name was thrown out carelessly, but it hadn't been from his usual anxiety when a teacher called attention to him. It had been from anticipation. Izuku stopped writing, realization coming down to kiss his forehead. He hadn't felt any anxiety yesterday. For the lucky few unfamiliar with chronic anxiety, it is like a jacket that's just a little too tight. Most days are fine if a little uncomfortable but manageable. Some days you don't even notice. Then there are days when it feels like the jacket is trying to break your ribs. It's so tight and hot, it makes you tremble and sweat. It makes it hard to breathe, and no matter what you do, you can't get it off. And no one can know because they'll laugh and wonder why you can't just take the stupid jacket off as if it was that easy. Anyway, the point is when the jacket's off, you notice. So the quirk had killed or suppressed his anxiety, which, Izuku supposes, would be nice if it hadn't turned him into that. No, there had to be more to this. The loss of anxiety was a symptom, not the cause. What else, he wonders as he begins to write again. He hadn't felt scared when he talked over his teacher, nor when he gave the class a lesson they'll probably never forget. So did the quirk suppress fear? No, that didn't feel right either. He had felt fear when he had seen Kaken in the clutches of the sludge villain. Izuku was beginning to feel frustrated with himself. He still didn't have the whole picture. He needed to dig deeper. There had to be a give and take with this quirk. It allowed him to be bold and confident, and he blinked. The light bulb above his head came on. Ruthless. His empathy. That's what he had been missing yesterday. He had only felt satisfaction when he ripped into his classmates and teacher. Had only felt vindicated that he was right when he confronted his principal. Normally, he formed his words and actions for others based on what he thought they needed. If Iwamoto-sensei seemed tired, Izuku made sure he was extra quiet not to bother him. A classmate looked like they were feeling down? Izuku would aim a smile their way if their eyes met. Depending on who it was, this sometimes backfired. He saw people's needs and did his best to accommodate them in small ways. Yesterday, what they needed never crossed his mind because it hadn't mattered to him. And that may not have been a bad thing. Izuku thought, drowsily, as he leaned against the arm of the couch. He set his notebook and pen on the floor as he curled up on the couch, eyes on the TV as he began to doze. At one point he woke up to a hand caressing his hair and a warm blanket draped over him, but he quickly went back under. The next time he woke was to the smell of breakfast and the sound of someone humming. He sits up, groggy, and blearily looks over to see his mom sitting next to him. She had been watching something on the TV but must have caught his movement out of the corner of her eye. "Good morning," she said softly with a sweet smile. "I called the school and told them you wouldn't be in today." "What? Why?" Izuku asked, brain still trying to spark itself back to life. Inko raised a disbelieving eyebrow at him. "Izuku, you were involved in a villain attack yesterday. One that was televised. I think you're allowed a day of rest. The school couldn't fight me on this if they wanted to." That was true. With the rise of quirks and villain attacks, a clause had made its way into schools that if a student was caught up in an attack, they could be excused from class even if they weren't injured. If it hadn't been televised and if he hadn't been confident yesterday, Aldra might have tried to fight her just to be insufferable. It also meant he didn't have to face the consequences of his actions. "Sweet," he sighed in relief, closing his eyes. "You're the best mom in the world. I love you." She laughs at that, but he wasn't joking. She really was the best. When he was younger, the kids at school told him that one day she would realize he was useless and leave him at the dump. He didn't want to believe them, but he had read stories from other quirkless people online. How some had been abandoned the moment their parents realized they weren't getting a quirk. There were others who ran away because, while their parents hadn't abandoned them, they wished they had. He wrote down all their tips for surviving on the streets just in case she became tired of him. She had found the list, written as well as a 7-year-old could, with a small pack of clothes and food hidden in the closet by the front door. Izuku had never seen her cry so hard before or since after he explained why he needed it. He broke her heart that day. He knows his life would be vastly different and far more miserable if his mom had a colder heart. "I'll remind you of that the next time you're in trouble," she teased him before turning serious. "But we do need to talk about yesterday, Izuku." He withheld a groan and pushed down his nerves. Sure? What's there to talk about though? It was all on the news, right? It's pretty cut and dry, haha. Yes, it was. By the way, you might want to stay off the internet for a little bit. Izuku looks at her, suspicious, because she sounds like she's withholding a laugh, but it goes as quickly as it came. "Izuku, I owe you an apology. But, did you break one of my collectibles or something?" "Let me talk." She took a deep breath. "After the doctor told us you would never get a quirk, I was scared. This world cares so much about quirks that I knew it was going to be rough for you no matter what path you chose. So when I saw you watching that old All Might clip and when you asked me if you could still be a hero, I dash." She wiped at her eyes. "I failed you. I should have told you yes. Even though you were only 4 and dreams change, I still should have told you yes. Because, Izuku," she looked at him and grinned, "you already are one. Yesterday, you showed the world you didn't need a quirk to save someone. No, they didn't disclose that you were quirkless, but that doesn't matter. Baby, your quick thinking saved Katsuki's life, and I am so proud of you." Izuku couldn't help it. Tears filled his eyes and he began to sob. "No. Izuku, don't cry. If you cry, then I'll cry and then we'll flood the whole apartment again dash." He hugged her. "You shouldn't be proud of me," he said, muffled into her shoulder as she accepted his embrace. "Yesterday was a fluke. It wasn't me." She stiffened at his confession, but she kept hugging him and ran a hand through his hair. "Izuku, what are you talking about? Of course it was you. I saw it on the news. I talked to you and Mitsuki dash. No, I was under the influence of a quirk. For most of the day I wasn't myself." She paused in stroking his hair. Gently, she grabbed his shoulders and pushed him back until she could see his face. "Explain." It was said in the tone that only a mother could have. A soft order that could not be ignored. So Izuku told her about his day. He left out some parts, such as blackmailing the principal and meeting All Might, and maybe he forgot to mention Kaken and their spat at lunch, but he felt like he gave her a pretty good summary, so why sweat the small details? "So, tomorrow I'll apologize to everyone for being a JRK," he told her, already anticipating that's what she would want. "I'd rather you didn't." I know I was under the influence of a quirk, but I still, what? He looked at her, eyes wide with shock. Inko sighed. Izuku, I raised you to be kind because I knew the world was going to be cruel to you, so I wanted you to be better than that. Yeah, and I think you did a great job. Maybe too great. I know your classmates haven't been kind to you in return. He winced. What? No, they're not that bad. Honey, we had to replace your school books so many times last year it was borderline ridiculous. The convenience store had bandages and ointment on hold for us. The clumsy excuse can only work so many times. So she hadn't been fooled. Okay, so there might have been a few scuffles, and the teasing went a little far, but it wasn't bullying, Mom, he told her, eyes on the floor. Izuku, she sighed, and he couldn't help but think she sounded disappointed with him. Last year you came home bleeding more times than I can count. If that isn't bullying, then what is it? He didn't have an answer. Petite hands framed his face and guided him until he was looking her in the eye. I can't help you if you don't tell me what's really going on. God knows Aldra isn't going to give me answers. It hurts to know that you were suffering, and I couldn't help you. Izuku, I need to know something. You won't want to answer me, but, please, I need to know. She held his gaze. Do you think you deserve that treatment? Well, his voice cracked. No? Maybe? I know it's not right, but none of the teachers ever sided with me, and I didn't want to kick up a fuss because they would call you and then it would turn into finger-pointing, and we wouldn't win anyway, so why bother you with it? For the second time in his life, Izuku broke his mother's heart. Izuku, she sobbed, hugging him like he was her last lifeline. You are never a bother. Your health, your happiness are not a bother to me. Ever. And I am always in your corner. It took a moment for them both to calm down. I should have told you this a long time ago, from the moment I suspected there was something wrong. Izuku, you don't owe anyone your kindness. Offer it to them, yes, but if they spit in your face. She gave him a feral grin that he had never seen grace her face before. If Kastuki had seen it, he would have coughed up a lung because Inko's and Izuku's grins were twins. If Mitsuki has seen it, she would have laughed because she remembers that grin and what it meant. There's nothing wrong with spitting back. Mom. Izuku sputtered, I can't do that. I would get so many detentions and I would never hear the end of it. Also, I'm not sure I can be, mean like that. Let it not be said that Midoriya Inko does not know her son. He has a good heart and he gives people far too many second chances, but she loves him for it. She might not always follow his thinking exactly, but she can glean enough to get from point A to point B. She knows that he's aware he's being treated poorly. She also knows it's difficult for him to understand that he can fight back because Izuku has always been hardest on himself. So she changes the equation. Say there was another quirkless kid in your class and your classmates treated them like they do you. What would you do? The change was immediate. Gone was her nervous child and in his place one with nerves of steel. One that was ready to fight. They'd have to crawl over my dead body before I would allow that to happen. It was a vicious and fiery response that slipped out his mouth without a second thought, and Inko couldn't hold back her laughter at how shocked he looks by his own words. Oh, she laughs a little harder at that because she can see it in his eyes. She can see that he gets it now. Wow, I'm an idiot. Her boy has a backbone. He rarely uses it for himself, though hopefully that will change. No, you're not an idiot, she said, trying to regain her composure. Let's make a deal. When you go back to school tomorrow, don't apologize to anyone. If any issues come up, call me. I'll come get you and we'll figure something out, okay? Education is important but not at the expense of your mental health, Izuku. Okay, he looks a little unsure, but she saw that same wild grin just barely peeking out. I think I can do that. I know you can, she kissed his forehead as she stood up. Come eat breakfast before it gets cold. Kay, he mumbled and grabbed his phone. As she made her way into the kitchen, she heard a gasp followed by a scandalized whisper. They turned me into a meme. For the sake of her child, she withheld her laughter and pretended she hadn't heard him. Going back to school was a surreal experience for Izuku. Even the walk there was weird because strangers kept doing double takes when they saw him. He knew why, of course, But that didn't make the situation better, it only made it harder to stop himself from blushing. He heard someone whisper, "Break it down for me, kid," as he passed by and picked up the pace. Being a meme was strange. On one hand, most people in memes weren't famous, so they weren't approached or harassed like heroes or celebrities. Some people might recognize him, but they didn't try to talk to him, thank goodness. On the other hand, he was now immortalized on the internet. Memes cycled through pretty quickly, and he didn't think his would stand amongst the greats, but it was still a fresh meme, so he had to wait out its popularity. It would be forgotten once a new hero fight was filmed. His phone buzzed. He took a glance and saw a message from his mom. "Mom, look at what showed up in the GIF section on my phone. Love breakitdown.gif." Of course it was that stupid image of him looking irritated and tired. He let out a huff of air that was both annoyed and appalled at the situation. He was probably wearing that exact expression right now because he was now a reaction image readily available for anyone to use. He was quick to let her know that this was serious, and she shouldn't be making fun of him. "Why would you show me this?" "Mom, breakitdown.gif. I think it's a cute photo of you. I don't think I have any photos of you pouting like this." "Me, you didn't need to send it twice. And I am not pouting. That is pure rage contained in a condensed form. Even if I was pouting, why would you want a photo of that? This betrayal will not be forgotten. Mom, hush, it's a good photo. And good luck today, sweetie. Remember what we talked about." The reminder brought him back to reality, and he could feel his anxiety steadily climbing as he walked through his school's entrance gate. In theory, not apologizing for what he did should be easy. But the reality is this: sorry is Midoriya Izuku's reaction word for any given moment, and it's going to take time to change that fact. Still, after that conversation with his mom, he can acknowledge that he has to move beyond that. He has to treat himself better, which means standing up for himself. It's going to be hard, but if he wants to be a hero that protects everyone with a smile, he needs to start with himself. This isn't a line of thinking he used to, and a part of him still feels it's a bit selfish, but he's given some of these people 10 years to treat him with basic human decency with nothing to show for it. 1 year for himself is nothing in comparison. His anxiety and his longing to be liked by his peers and teacher won't disappear easily, but that doesn't mean he'll take their abuse anymore. It helps when he imagines them treating another quirkless kid like they do him. It kills any kindness he feels towards them. Yesterday he had spent quite a bit of time theorizing the type of reactions he would receive today and the best ways to counteract without any bloodshed. If the reaction was fear, he would smile and say nothing. If the reaction was anger, he would frown and say nothing. If the reaction was anything else, he would make some sort of expression and say nothing. Are any of these good plans? Should they even be qualified as plans? Probably not, but Izuku's 14 and had a day to prep, so he thinks that what he's got down is good enough to work with. He notices as he walks through the hallways that the conversations around him quiet before gaining volume again as he walks past. He does his best to ignore that sign of impending doom and walks into his homeroom, head high, face blank. His classmates that were already there stop what they're doing, and Izuku can feel the fear radiating off them. He smiles. It wasn't the same smile he had given so confidently a few days before. It is a little stiff, a little fake, because he doesn't want his classmates to be scared of him. He has no longing to be feared, he just wants to be respected, to be treated fairly. But if they won't give him that, if his only choices are being feared or being ridiculed, then fear it is. He's done being a doormat. He makes it to his seat as more students trickle in. It was a bit funny to see how quickly some of them went from laughing and chatting to primal terror the moment they saw him. Izuku was concerned some of them were suffering whiplash from extreme shift in moods. He stays quiet. He does not stop smiling. Finally, the bell rings and Iwamoto-sensei walks in looking like he had slept in his clothes. He doesn't even seem to notice the stifling silence of the classroom. Even as he begins to take roll, the meek responses don't register until he calls Izuku's name. "Here, sensei." Izuku said, keeping his voice soft because he is beginning to feel bad for his classmates. He withheld a wince when he saw several shoulders tense and few kids jerk in surprise. He hadn't been that scary, had he? He looks around the room, eyes locking with Ito, who paled and broke his gaze in record time. The eyeball thing. That probably was a legitimate reason to shake in one's seat like Ito was doing. Yet, Izuku felt the rest of his class was being overdramatic. When he had broken down their quirks, it was to show their weaknesses, to show how a villain could defeat them. He wasn't actually going to do any of that. It was all hypothetical. Also, as someone who has been threatened with bodily harm since primary school, he found this new attitude towards him annoying. When someone threatened to sucker punch him in the face for muttering too loud, he squeaked, gave a quiet apology, and moved on with his life. Iwamoto-sensei paused upon hearing his voice. He looked at Izuku in confusion, as if he didn't understand why Izuku was in his class on this fine morning. "Good to have you back," Iwamoto-sensei said after it felt like he had stared at Izuku for 10 solid minutes without saying anything. He resumed roll call at a quick pace. "Looks like only Bakugo is absent today. Let's get started. Today's lesson will be about..." Izuku tuned him out. He was surprised that that Bakugo wasn't in class. Aunt Mitsuki must have made that decision because Bakugo wouldn't have skipped even if he had permission. Despite the favoritism, Bakugo had earned his spot at being top of the class, and part of that was because he came to class every day and did his work. The rest of homeroom PRD was filled with tension. There was no rowdy laughter, no casual use of quirks, no one talking to each other or turning around to tease him. Everyone was silent and focused, hanging on to Iwamoto-sensei's every word. Pencils were taking down notes like lives depended on it. Izuku felt like he was looking at himself when he was writing a quirk analysis. It was both an amazing and frightening sight. He had accounted for fear being a reaction but not the tension that came with it. A part of him wanted to stand up and say, "Hey, could you all stop acting like I'm holding you at gunpoint? I'd really appreciate it, thanks." Instead, he steels himself and raises his hand. Iwamoto-sensei looks like he's considering ignoring Izuku's entire existence but decides to acknowledge him after what looks like an intense mental battle with himself. "Yes, Midoriya?" Izuku stands up and puts on his best smile. A smile that he knows is calming to look at, even strangers have said so. Curious, then, that the tension seemed to triple and he could almost taste the panic in the air. "Apologies for the interruption, Sensei. I won't take up much of your time. I think there is a misunderstanding about the lesson I gave the other day that I would like to clear up." Someone let out a muffled sob. Midoriya elected to ignore it. "When I said no one was qualified to be a hero, I meant that no one is qualified right now." He looked around the classroom. "I'm including myself in that number, by the way. I believe that everyone in this class could be a hero, but they would have to work for it. Whether that's through physical training, quirk training, or a self-reflection on morals depends on the person." "Bullshit," a classmate muttered to the person next to him, but Midoriya heard it. Like hell he believes that. He just doesn't want to feel guilty about what he said. Izuku almost broke. He came close to apologizing, but he made a promise to his mom. "Time to spit back. You can think what you like, Kuwabara-san," Izuku started, feeling something cold swell up within him, "but consider this. If the words from a quirkless nobody like me was enough to kill your dream, then a villain would have obliterated you. You're welcome." He sat back down. "That's all I have to say, Sensei. I won't bring it up again." His attempt to kill the tension failed, and by the time school ended, Izuku had a feeling his last year at Aldra would be physically painless but emotionally uncomfortable. As he was walking home, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expecting a text from his mom. Instead, it opened up to his texts with All Might, and wow, wasn't that a strange thought to have? He had All Might's personal number. He hadn't changed the contact name out of paranoia that someone would see it and think he was delusional. They had messaged back and forth for a little bit yesterday, and the fanboy in him loved rereading the messages. "Unknown number, greetings. This is All Might. I hope you are feeling better. You seemed very tired when we last spoke. I hope the quirk wore off and that you're getting some rest. Please let me know when you would like to meet. I am free in the evenings." Me, did. The quirk gave me a boost in confidence, but it took another emotion away, I think. I'm feeling much better now. By the way, I don't think I told you, but I'm Midoriya Izuku and it is an honor. But today isn't good for me because I'm staying home to recuperate, and I go back to school tomorrow so I'll be busy. Can we meet on the weekend? Your schedule is full. Unknown number, that would work perfectly for me. Me? Okay, great. Let me know the time and place and I'll be there. All Might had not replied and Izuku wondered if he had upset the man. Did he sound desperate? He was dying to know but decided he would not spam All Might with messages. Izuku is a respectful fanboy. By the time night had fallen and he hadn't heard anything, he figured whatever interest All Might had for him had passed. Until now. Unknown number, Dagoba Beach. 3 p.m. So you think you found your successor? Principal Nedzu's office was bathed in orange light from the evening sun. Sitting in an overstuffed chair, Yagi watched as Nedzu took a sip of his tea. I'm not sure. As I mentioned, he was affected by a quirk, but it sounds like it's worn off. He knows about my second form, but I didn't explain my quirk to him. I need to get to know him better before I make my final decision. That may take a while. But he still caught your attention. Midoriya Izuku, was it? Nedzu asked, as if he hadn't already known the boy's name before Yagi came to visit. Yes. From his texts, he seems like the earnest type. Very different from the boy I met on the roof, but that could just be how he writes. Different how? When it came to words, he pulled no punches. Yagi said dryly. It's been some time since someone ripped into me like that. He's not counting the people who knew him best. If Naomasa wasn't so polite, Yagi would probably be chewed out on a daily basis. If he spoke with Gran Torino every day, he would be chewed out on a daily basis and wouldn't have an ounce of self-confidence left. That man didn't pull punches either when he thought Yagi was being an idiot. And he thought that a lot. He didn't say it out loud, but it had been refreshing, in a way, to have someone so young call him out. Yagi had been the symbol of peace for a number of years, and while he does not regret it, the position put him on a pedestal that few could reach. His words held more weight than most, so he had to be careful with them. If he said something that could be misinterpreted or used as an excuse to attack others, it would be disastrous. He had made that mistake once during an interview. He made an offhand remark about eating green peppers as a snack. The demand for green peppers skyrocketed overnight. The pepper industry is still recovering from that incident. It's not bad to be vicious. Nedzu said with a small, terrifying giggle. He was tapping away at his keyboard and whatever he was reading he seemed to like. I think I would like to meet this child, regardless of if you pick him or not. Why? Yagi asked. He's going to take our entrance exam, so I have access to his username on the major social media sites. I've been reading some comments he's posted on several videos about quirks. He has a grasp for analysis. Nedzu was beginning to vibrate in his seat. If guided properly, that unpolished talent could be honed into something very powerful. He did have a notebook with him. Hero analysis for the future or something like that. I think it was labeled number 13. Nedzu went still. His beady black eyes stared into Yagi's and the hunger in them was almost unfathomable. A journal? Of course, that would make sense. Nedzu said, and Yagi knew he wasn't talking to him. He mentally apologized to Midoriya Izuku for giving Nedzu this information. So you wouldn't stop a quirkless student from taking the exam for the hero course? He asked, more in an attempt to distract Nedzu than anything else. Of course not. Nedzu replied with a smile. There is potential in everyone to be a hero and I love an underdog story. The practical is bias and despite my best efforts so far, the Hero Commission won't budge on that. Strong, flashy quirks are what they like to see. If I had my way the practical would be more psychological. He began to giggle again. So they won't cause a fuss if he applies. Behind closed doors they will, especially if he passes. The Hero Commission has a lot of weight but even they can't do anything thanks to the Quirkless Protection Act. Although if you pick him, it won't matter, will it? I'm conflicted, Yagi admitted after a moment of silence. I'm running out of time, but he's so young. One for all isn't just a quirk, it's a legacy and I'm hesitant to hand it over to someone without explaining what they're getting into. All for one is dead. The body disappeared before it could be proven. I want to believe he's gone, but if someone could come back from the dead, it would be him. Yagi growled. I don't want to involve a new generation into this mess. You don't have a choice. Nedzu reminded him, and Yagi let loose a heavy sigh because the other was right. That's not the only reason. I've also been looking into the treatment of quirkless individuals, and I do not like what I've found. Meeting Midoriya, Izuku had reminded Yagi of a part of himself he thought long dead. Reminded him enough to look into the current quirkless generation, just to see how they were faring. But after reading about the suicide rates, the lack of employment opportunities, the casual dismal of them as human beings, well, that part of him flared up like a phoenix reborn, furious at the injustice. Before he became a hero, he was an insignificant quirkless child trying to find peace in a brutal world. 14 was a long time ago for Yagi, but it was impossible to forget being quirkless, no matter how far down he buried it within himself. He needed a successor, but he also wanted this kid to prove them all wrong. He wanted to see this kid make a path for a group of people lost in society's shadows. Because when peace was not an option, hope always found a way to shine in the dark. When Izuku had seen All Might's text with the location, he had been excited. Sure, he had imagined them meeting at a quiet cafe or maybe sitting in a park surrounded by sakura trees to talk things over. But a beach was a good setting for a personal conversation. This is what he was thinking until he actually made it to the beach. The smelly, pungent beach with junk piled so high it killed the horizon line. Dagoba really was a one-of-a-kind beach for all the wrong reasons. He couldn't help but think as he looked at the garbage surrounding him from all sides, this place feels like a metaphor for our first meeting. Instead of getting the confirmation I dreamed of, I got a trashy, realistic response. I wonder if All Might did this on purpose? Ah, there you are, young Midoriya. The call was faint, but it was easy for Izuku to spot All Might waving to him, even with so much junk around him. The man was in his civilian form and looked tired even from afar, so Izuku jogged to meet him halfway. Hello again. Izuku said, giving a hasty bow. Thank you for meeting up with me. I apologize for imposing on you last time. Oh no, don't bow. All Might said, out of breath. I'm glad to see you're feeling better. And there is no need to apologize, quite the opposite, I think. Then, without any warning, without any indicators to tip Izuku off and prepare himself, All Might bowed to him. Oh, Izuku thought, feeling faint, this is a strange dream. My boy, I owe you an apology, the number one hero said, oblivious to the fact that Izuku was about to have a heart attack. I said some very thoughtless things to you, and while they came from a place of concern, they were also unnecessarily cruel and dismissive. When you fought that villain, you reminded me of why I became a hero in the first place. So you have both my deepest apologies and gratitude. Apology accepted. Please stop bowing. Please. Izuku managed to squeak out and knew then and there that All Might did not consciously choose this beach as some sort of passive-aggressive dig. Let's just sit and you can tell me why you called me out here. Unless it was just to apologize? No, there is more I need to tell you, All Might said, wasting no time sitting down on the sand, and Izuku followed suit. After our last conversation, I realized I was being hypocritical and decided to do some research. Hypocritical? I wouldn't have called it that. I wasn't happy with your answer, but I should have expected it. And oh, did it pain Izuku to admit that? But he knew what he was up against. In a world of quirks, he was dying breed. It was natural that people would see his dream as impossible to achieve. It was still wrong of me, All Might insisted. You see, I developed my quirk very late. I was around your age actually. Before that I was essentially quirkless. Oh, Izuku said but felt nothing. It was as if someone had dumped cold water on him. To hear that All Might had been quirkless, for him to say during their first meeting that Izuku's dream was impossible. It was a good thing he wasn't under the effect of that quirk, because Izuku has no idea what he would have done with this new information. It was different back then, All Might said, and Izuku thought he sounded a bit rushed. I was no stranger to being bullied or having people make fun of my dream. I even had several plans in place if I was rejected from the hero schools I applied to. There had been talk of banning quirkless people from applying, but it never came into fruition, thank goodness. Why are you telling me this? Izuku asked, trying to kill the numbness welling up within him. He felt disappointed in the man, and maybe it showed on his face, because All Might's shoulders tensed up and he kept eye contact with Izuku. Because you need to know. I need to make sure you know that I was wrong. About many things. I was wrong when I said you couldn't be a hero. Without you, that boy would have died. You didn't need a quirk to save him, you relied on your wits and it worked. He gave Izuku a shaky smile. I'm not sure how much this will mean coming from me, but you can become a hero. You have the heart and spirit for it. Izuku, in typical fashion, began to cry. Oh dear. My boy, no, I didn't mean to. There is no need for tears. I'm sorry. It's hereditary. Izuku exclaimed, wiping at his eyes. You're not just saying that, right? I know I told you to lie, but you don't need to with me. I don't need validation. He gave All Might a tearful grin. I'm going to become a hero. Nothing's going to stop me. All Might blinked at the declaration, his blue eyes wide and his eyebrows almost climbed to the top of his forehead. Then the emotion passed and he let out a loud, booming laugh. That's the spirit. Keep that passion, my boy, it will take you far. As for my words, I meant them. Stay inspired, for you have inspired me. What? Izuku sputtered, face beet red. I'm not sure how I did that, but dash. It's as I said, you reminded me of why I became a hero in the first place. You reignited me and reminded me that there are still people that need help, even if they're not being attacked by villains. All Might took a deep breath. I began researching quirkless discrimination. What I found was disturbing. Not just the lack of resources, but the careless and cruel attitude towards quirkless people rankled me. To see so many people being treated poorly for something beyond their control dash, he cut himself off, looking sick. Something needs to change. I became a symbol of peace for everyone. For a whole group of people to be left behind and forgotten is a disgrace on my part. I plan to make up for that. How? Izuku asked, voice a little sharper than intended. I was thinking of starting a charity. Any charity endorsed by All Might does well. Please don't do that. I'm sorry. All Might looked perplexed and Izuku understood why. Here was the most influential hero in Japan offering people like him a new lifeline with no strings attached, and Izuku was saying no on behalf of the quirkless population. Izuku let out a sigh as he thought about how to explain what it is to be quirkless to someone who hadn't been in a long, long time. I can only speak from my experiences, but I think the research on quirkless people is a bit, wonky. Wonky? All Might repeated. Wonky, Izuku nodded. It's not a topic looked into often, and when it is, it's mostly by doctors from a medical standpoint. I think the last major paper that had to do with our socio-economical status was 30 years ago. Anyway, it's skewed because most quirkless people are from an older generation, and that's where the data is compiled from, so it doesn't accurately portray the younger generation or our experiences. Can you tell me? All Might asked, and it was said so earnestly that Izuku had to hold back his tears. He couldn't remember the last time a stranger cared enough to ask that. He's almost hesitant to continue because what if All Might dismisses his experiences like he did his dream? Then he remembers that he's given people multiple second chances over the years for things far more damning than this. He can give All Might this one chance. He wants to. Honestly, it's not that bad. My life, I'm not ashamed to be quirkless. Do I wish I had a quirk? Of course, but doesn't everyone? Even in the pre-quirk era, they had stories about humans with special powers. And that makes sense. If you had the choice between being a basic human or being a human with superpowers, most of us would pick the second option. Wouldn't you? Yes. All Might admitted, though he sounded melancholy. If given a choice, I would have chosen a special power. Right? I don't think it's a bad thing. I really love quirks. They're so versatile and really show how far we've evolved as a race. The things people can do these days is amazing. Izuku frowned, but people forget that amazing things can be done without quirks too, and it's really frustrating. He looked up at the sky, contemplating his next words. Like I said, my life is pretty good, but that's because most people don't know I'm quirkless unless I tell them. Once they know, it's like they forget everything they knew about me. I'm no longer Midoriya Izuku to them. I'm the quirkless kid they don't want to talk to because they think it's a disease they can catch. That, or they come under the assumption that quirkless means disabled and then I'm treated like glass. Izuku took a big breath, eyes never leaving the sky. Or they think it's a free pass to beat me up because being quirkless makes me lesser. Somehow. Most people go for the third option. There's a sharp intake of breath and Izuku breaks gazes with the blue sky to look at the man next to him. All Might suddenly looked very pale in Izuku's eyes. But my life is good. That wasn't a joke. Izuku tries to assure him. My boy, you just admitted that people beat you for something beyond your control. Yes, I'm working on changing that. Izuku considered telling him it already had changed, but figured All Might probably wouldn't be down with blackmailing people in positions of power. He would be wrong. All Might would absolutely be down for that. Anyway, in comparison to other quirkless kids my age, I have it good. I think we have the highest homeless population, but some of that is because the streets look better than an abusive home. Not sure about suicide rates, but those are probably pretty high. You mentioned All Might began, voice so soft Izuku almost didn't hear it over waves crashing onto the cluttered shore. You said someone told you to jump off a roof. Izuku flinched and mentally cursed himself. DMNU, confident me. Why'd you have to be such a blabbermouth? His first instinct was to say that Bakugo didn't mean it, but he repressed the urge. In the end, it didn't matter what Bakugo's intentions were, he had said it. It wasn't the first time, but it was the first time it was said directly to my face, so I guess they get extra points for bravado, yeah? Izuku tried to joke. All Might didn't laugh. It's mostly cyberbullying. Well, okay, I'll hear it go die in the hallways at school sometimes, but most people won't go beyond that, and it's easy to ignore. That's going to change though, he ended with a smile. Someone had actually apologized when they had bumped into him, and wasn't that a novelty? All Might did not look convinced. He looked rather alarmed and determined. How can I help? If the charity is a bad idea, there has to be something I can do. The charity isn't the problem, Izuku admitted after a moment. It's that it would be attached to you, that's the issue. Forgive me, but I don't understand. If you're worried it will flop, it won't. No. My worry is that it will become too popular and quirklessness will be brought up in the media. No offense, but the less attention we get, the better. Even with good intentions, any time we're brought up, it ends badly for us. About 5 years ago, someone tried to organize a quirkless parade and they got an amazing response and a ton of donations. It was nice to see. Even those of us that weren't going were excited. But the day of, someone with a fire quirk lost control, and, well, it ended in disaster. All the floats were damaged beyond repair, dozens of people were hospitalized and 2 people died. I remember that, All Might said, but I had no idea it was from a quirk. I thought they said a pyrotechnic machine malfunctioned. Izuku snorted. I wasn't there, but I know it wasn't that. I checked a popular quirkless forum about it. Turns out the arsonist came from old money, so he wasn't charged despite there being video evidence of him laughing as everything burned. I think those clips are still online somewhere. He knows they are. He also knows that the arsonist disappeared not long after he was cleared. There had been some interesting now long deleted questions about him on the forum right before he went missing. Now, Izuku's not saying the arsonist is dead, and he's definitely not saying that a quirkless person took him out, because there's no evidence of that. The forum doesn't like to keep old, painful topics around. That's all. There are other ways you can help, Izuku said, after seeing All Might's stricken face at the revelation. There are a few good quirkless charities already established. You could make an anonymous donation to them. If you donate food or clothing or anything to the homeless shelters, there's a high chance you'll be helping out a quirkless person. Those are excellent ideas. Forgive me if I sounded selfish. I wanted to use my status to change people's opinions, but I can see how it would look like a cheap shot at pretending to care. The last thing I want is to cause trouble for any of you. It was said with such sincerity that All Might became Izuku's favorite hero all over again. You, see, Izuku could feel the tears gathering in his eyes again. You have no idea how much that means to me. How much that will mean for so many people, even if they don't know it's from you. All Might hesitated for a moment, as if he was uncertain, before leaning in and hugging him. Holy shit. A hug from All Might. Izuku can die happy now. For a long time the only sound heard was the waves crashing against the garbage. I'm sorry, Izuku rubbed at his eyes after he calmed down. I swear I'll fix my crying issue before I become a hero. I don't want to be known as Crybaby, the tearful hero. I don't think there is anything wrong with crying. Though most people do prefer a smile to tears when we come to rescue them. All Might joked, patting his back. What type of hero do you want to be? I want to be able to save people with a smile. Izuku replied. I want people to know they're safe with me. I don't want anyone to feel lonely or forgotten. All Might rubbed his chin in thought. Oh, of course I know it's impossible to save everyone. Izuku was quick to assure. I'm not naive or arrogant enough to believe that I could do that. It's not a bad dream. All Might replied, but don't you want something more? What do you mean? My boy, what you just described is a founding longing in many heroes. We want to save as many lives as possible, and a lot of us do that by combining it with other passions. For instance, Present Mike isn't afraid to step in and save civilians from a villain attack, but he also runs his radio show late into the night to take calls from people who don't feel heard in their everyday lives. He volunteers at a suicide prevention hotline and works closely with organizations that help people with disabilities and volatile quirks. Oh! Izuku was fascinated and hung onto All Might's every word. He knew some of this hero fanboy, but it was exhilarating to hear from an actual hero and not his regular sources. The wild PP cats, All Might continued on, focus on rescues in wildlife areas because all their members have shared passion for outdoor activities and the environment. There's a reason they do endorsements with eco-friendly products, and it's not just for the money. What about you? Izuku asked. Do you have anything like that? All Might was quiet as he thought over the question. When I was your age, I noticed something was wrong with our society. People were scared. Villainy was on the rise and heroes were being raked over by the media for not doing better. Back then there wasn't as much glam in the industry as there is now. I hated seeing my neighbors afraid. It left a bad taste in my mouth that there was so much fear and the individuals causing it didn't care. Indeed, it felt like they relished in it. I didn't want to live in that society. I didn't want to be scared of everything. He gave Izuku a grin. So I decided a symbol was needed. Something that people could look to and smile. Something that could allow them to relax and ease their worries. Something all of us had been missing for a very long time. Peace. Izuku said, awe filling his entire being. Yes, peace. Admittedly, I could only bring a large-scale peace to society, not individuals. I could not give it to everyone, he frowned. If I could bust down the doors every time someone abuses their spouse or child, if I could be on every rooftop when someone is looking over the edge, I would, but it is like you said earlier, I cannot save everyone. But we can try. Yes, we can try. All Might agreed. About what I said, combining heroism with passions, think on it? Not every hero does that, but for those of us that do, it's an extra boost when we think we've hit our limit. Admittedly, due to my injury and my schedule, I don't do as much as others. Hence why I donate or create charities for my passions and put people I trust in charge. I will definitely think on it. Izuku nodded, wishing he had his notebook. He had a bunch of ideas already swirling around in his head. I still have to get into UE first. I think I can ace the written exam if I study hard enough. The physical part, though, I'm not as confident in since I don't what it will be. The slingshot worked well on that sludge villain. Maybe I can apply for support items. Support items can help a hero in a pinch. All Might said, but you're going to need both brains and brawn if you want to succeed. Your mind is plenty sharp, but... He poked Izuku's arm with a bony finger. Getting into the hero course is going to be near impossible if you don't train your body. Izuku could have given him 1,000 excuses for why his body wasn't up to par. He could tell All Might he tried routines on his own in the past but nothing stuck. He could admit to trying to find an inexpensive dojo and failing. He could mention how being bullied for most of his life left his body tired, aching, and stressed to the point that physical training sounded like a Herculean effort. He doesn't say any of this because he's not interested in bringing up the past when he's focused on the future. You're right. I need to figure something out. I'm a fast runner, but my endurance isn't great. Building up some muscle should be a good starting point. There are enough tutorials online that I can get a decent start. I'll need weights. Should I buy them outright or try a gym? Maybe Dash. All Might coughed to get his attention. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to start muttering. It's a bad habit. You apologize entirely too much, All Might said with a grin, and it took Izuku a moment to realize he was being teased, not reprimanded. Midoriya, please let me help you train for the entrance exam. It'll be difficult, your body will feel like it's going through hell, but I think we have just enough time before the exam to make it work. Izuku's inner fanboy went, oh, hell yeah. The rest of Izuku, suspicious of any help from an adult, went, hold up, something seems off. Out loud, people-pleaser that he is, he said, I would be honored. Is there a gym you want to meet at or Dash? All Might laughed, and that's when Izuku knew he was being played in some way, but he wasn't sure how. Yes, but a gym alone won't cut it. We start right here. All Might transformed into his hero persona and gestured towards the garbage. We start with you cleaning up this beach. It'll be both training and community service. There was the how. Izuku tried to hold his tongue, he really did. It was clear that All Might was proud of this plan, and he looked so excited to be training Izuku. It really was an honor. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Who else could say that All Might offered to personally train them? If the circumstances were different, Izuku would have been touched by the gesture. His next words were to politely thank All Might and nothing more. Are you providing me with protective gear? Wow, Izuku. Good job thanking the man. Especially after he kindly listened to you talk about quirkless people for the past hour. Amazing. It was hard to tell in his hero form, but All Might's grin might have turned perplexed. Whatever for? Izuku took a deep breath and took a plunge. All Might, he began, trying to think of a tactful way of saying what he wanted before giving up. This beach is filled with sharp, rusty metal. It's clearly being used as an illegal dumping ground. There's a leaking biohazard bag 2 feet away from us, and I don't need to look to know there are some used needles hidden in the sand. I'm also afraid we might find a dead body in the garbage that's only being hidden by the smell of everything else. All Might deflated. I still want to do it. Izuku was quick to assure him when he saw his slumped shoulders. I just want to do it without having to explain to my mom why I need a tetanus shot after I inevitably stab myself with a rusty fork. Yes, of course. I don't want you to get hurt. We can get some gloves and other things before we start. And if nothing else, this might help me get over my fear of secondary locations. Izuku rambled on, not realizing All Might had agreed with him. All Might coughed up some blood. Your fear of what? He asked aghast, taking out a handkerchief, one that, suspiciously, looks like the one Izuku gave him on the roof, to wipe his mouth. All Might, Izuku began, you know what a secondary location is, right? Of course I know. I'm confused about why you know the term. It's mostly used for police work. I learned it in our yearly assembly at school. What are they teaching you that you would need to know that? Street smarts. Izuku practically yelled, looking unhinged. Every year since kindergarten, a detective comes to the school and gives a presentation on how to not get kidnapped. The first step is to not talk to adults that you don't know. Which I ignored when I first met you. I wasn't going to kidnap you. You latched onto me. I know, but it was a risk I was willing to take. He gave us a lot of good tips. Did you know wearing a money clip can save your life if you're being mugged? All you have to do is toss it one direction and run the other way. Have you ever been mugged? All Might's arched eyebrow was not appreciated by Izuku. No, but I am prepared for when it happens. Not if when. Izuku knew it was only a matter of time. Like I said, he taught us a lot of things, but what sticks with me the most is secondary locations because the chance of coming back alive is close to none. This, Izuku gestured towards the beach, is a secondary location straight out of my nightmares. I'm going to talk to my contact in the police department about this. All Might sighed before pulling a folder out of his back pocket. In the meantime, take this. Izuku took the folder labeled Aim to Pass. American Dream Plan. and thumbed through it. A meal plan? You'll be working out a lot more, so we need to make sure you're getting sufficient nutrients. I've also listed several workout routines you can do at home. All Might looked so proud, his chest was puffed out. I may have been careless with this location, but I did think this training plan through. He looked Izuku in the eye, grin never leaving his face. So how about it? Think you can handle what I have in store? Izuku snapped the folder shut and grinned back. I told you, didn't I? Nothing's going to stop me from being a hero. Let the 10 months from hell commence. The first month was the most painful. Izuku's body was not prepared for the sheer amount of heavy lifting it would be doing, and it let him know. It protested with aching sore muscles, it screamed with a heavy tiredness that didn't let up even after a good night's rest. It was cruel enough to make him feel pain in places he hadn't thought possible. Izuku is stubborn, though, and he wants to be a hero more than anything. When it came to a contest of stubbornness between his will and his body, his will won. By the end of his first month, his body had gotten used to the new routine. When the second month began, a small portion of the beach had been cleared. All Might slowly started adding more training into the regimen. They began going to a quiet gym that specialized in weight training. Izuku was given a gripper to strengthen his hands, and he took it everywhere. At school, during dinner, watching TV, it was always in one hand or the other. Even before the second month was up, Izuku noticed the difference in his body. He could tell he was getting stronger and gaining stamina. But that was all he was gaining. As he looked over the plan, he realized the only training he had for speed and agility was the running portion. He knew that wouldn't be enough to get him where he wanted to be. All Might's plan focused on building up strength and endurance, but Izuku also wanted to be able to move with a little more grace. Some of his injuries his mom had seen had come from his clumsiness. He spent a few days trying to figure out how to add it in. He didn't have the time nor the money for a dance class. He discarded parkour after some research because it looked like there was a lot of trial error before one got the hang of it. Since this was crunch time, he couldn't afford to break any bones. The only thing he could think of was extending his runs, but that wouldn't solve the problem. The solution came to him one day after school. He'd been waiting for the crosswalk light to change when he overhears the girl in front of him complaining to her friends. It's not fair. No one will challenge me anymore. I'm getting so bored waiting for someone to dance against. Izuku couldn't see her face, but it sounded like she was pouting. Geez, Mina, chill out. You dominate dance off at Silver Comic. No one's challenging you because your score is too high. One of her friends laughed as the light changed, and they began to cross the street. Izuku did not follow. Instead, he changed directions, texted his mom that he would be late, and found himself standing in front of an arcade. The Silver Comic arcade had all the new games as well as a variety of retro ones near the back. It was a popular arcade because it had an option for people who weren't interested in the prizes but still wanted to play. For a flat fee, one would get a special wristband and could play as many games as they wanted as long as they didn't leave. Izuku had his eyes set on Dance Off, a game focused on movement, patterns, and rhythm. He had seen a few kids playing on it before but had been too embarrassed to try himself. But for the sake of his dream, he's willing to look silly. Trading in some money for a wristband, he heads straight to the machine, thankful that the arcade is mostly empty. The first dance he picks, he fails. It was too fast-paced, his coordination was off, and the sudden music had startled him. The game doesn't even offer him a spot on the scoreboard after his disastrous performance. Still he tries again, and again, and again until he makes it onto the scoreboard. Every Thursday night for the next few months, he would be a fixture at the arcade, dancing until it became second nature to move his feet swiftly without looking down. It took ages, but Green_by finally dethroned Alien_Queen and took her spot at the top of the scoreboard. Izuku had no idea he had caused a bit of a stir by doing this. Since he was always at the arcade on its emptier nights, it was like some cryptid dancer had thrown out a challenge to the other players. Ashido Mina was both incensed and excited by this. She and others had watched as Green_Boi's score slowly went up until it was in second place. She fought hard to make sure he wouldn't overtake her, but in the end he won. She had a lot of fun fighting to keep her title as top dancer, but it would have been way more exciting if he had actually shown up for a dance-off. Since Izuku's goal wasn't actually to be the top player, he never read the other usernames. Which was a real shame because once he took first place, some very talented kids had danced their best to put out the following message. Green_BOI, 98,679. Alien 94,655. Hey_Greenboy, 88,127. Dance_off, 82,784. Sat_1 p.m. 79371. Please? 74354. A lot of people had shown up that Saturday, hopeful to see the dance battle of the year. Izuku was not one of them. He was cleaning a beach, still half expecting to find a dead body somewhere within the garbage. Along with Dance Off, there was one other game that caught his attention. Laser tag. While the dancing game was fun, and it did help his footwork, it didn't give him a lot of space to move. Laser tag though? It had a whole area where he could move about, not worry if he took a hard fall. Not only that, but he could face off against other people or robots depending on which route he felt like doing. There was an even option of joining a team or doing a solo run. The system for laser tag didn't have usernames like the other games. A team could put in a name, but solo players would have numbers assigned to them. Izuku always chose the solo runs because he would have felt bad if he had brought down a team score by playing poorly. Again, he didn't really pay attention to the scoreboard and had no idea that over the months, his dedication and passion to become better had turned him into a feared player. He heard other players complaining about a demonic little solo gremlin that was able to manipulate teams into shooting their own players through clever sneak attacks and artful dodging. Thanks to the headgear everyone had to wear and the darkness of the arena, no one could ever get a good look at the player. Still, Izuku shivered at the descriptions, glad he hadn't had to face off against such a ruthless player, unaware that person in question was himself. So the arcade was for training, but there was a prize that Izuku desperately wanted. Sitting on the top shelf, locked in a glass case, was a figure of All Might standing in an iconic hero pose. Up for grabs for anyone with 100,000 tickets. It was the most hideous knockoff he had ever seen. The colors of the suit were wrong and the paint job was poor. One of All Might's antennas was longer than the other, and Izuku was ready to bet his life that the body mold was from some other hero and they just popped All Might's head on it and hoped no one would notice. The grin painted on looked more like a grimace of pain. For some insane reason, whoever made it tried to give All Might the most detailed eyes on the planet and failed horribly at the task. It gave off the vibe of being low-key cursed. Izuku had to have it. He needed that ugly thing on his nightstand, ready to scare him every morning for the rest of his life. He needed All Might to autograph it. He was ready to pull out some cash for the tokens when the cashier took one look at him and asked, "What prize do you want?" I don't have any tickets. But I'm going to purchase some tokens." "Yeah, no. Don't worry about it. Just tell me what you want. You can have anything." "Really? Are you sure? I don't want you to get in trouble." "Oh, right." The cashier looked like they had just remembered something. "You don't know." "Know what?" "That you're our 100th customer tonight, so you get a free prize." "Really?" The truth was, employees saw the dance-off drama unfolding and loved it. Seeing a group of kids coming every day to find their mystery rival and always just missing him was a fine form of entertainment. The fact that the same kid was the reason their laser tag regulars were losing their minds was equally funny to them. They had already planned on letting him have a prize if he asked. Then the owner of the arcade saw the rise in customers and an increased interest in their laser tag arena. It didn't take him long to figure who had caused it, and he told all the employees that, if that green-haired kid ever wants a prize, give it to him. He's more than earned it. And okay, a few of them noticed he was the same kid in the meme that they sent each other in their group chat. It was a favorite when they were mocking difficult customers. The cashier, realizing this kid had no idea about the chaos he caused, was only able to hold their laughter in thanks to their years of working in retail. Izuku wasn't one to question a blessing and shyly pointed at the ugliest All Might in existence. The cashier raised an eyebrow. They had put that up there as a joke. "Really? You want that? Please. The next morning Izuku woke up and, after seeing the figure looking back at him, almost had a heart attack. It was one of the best decisions he had ever made. When the third month came, he was thinking deeply about how to add in what he loved to his training. All Might was right, wanting to be a hero that saves as many people as possible was basic. Izuku couldn't deny that. But how could he combine that with something else when heroes were his passion? His first thought was his quirk analysis. Despite what everyone said, his notes weren't creepy. They were meant to help improve quirk usage and be aware of potential weaknesses. He had been taking notes for years, he knew they were solid, but he wasn't sure how he could incorporate them into his own heroism. Somehow, he had a feeling most heroes wouldn't take it seriously if a quirkless teenager shoved handwritten notes into their faces with the claim that it would improve their lives dramatically. If he tried to send them anonymously, it might be taken as a threat rather than a critique. Even he could see how iffy and stalkerish that might look. It was annoying him enough that he asked his mom for some input. Does it have to be about quirks? This passion thing? She asked. She knew he had stepped up his training. At first, she had been worried, especially when Izuku showed her a picture of his personal trainer. All Might's civilian form didn't really inspire trust. But Izuku won her over by reminding her that he still knew how to throw his money clip one way and run the other. No? But besides heroes, I really like quirks, so I thought it would be good to incorporate. Somehow. I guess I don't understand why you need to do this. Isn't helping others enough? Her question caused something in Izuku's mind to click into place, and while he still wasn't sure if it was the answer, it might be the path to one. He gives her a kiss on the cheek before running to his room to look up some information about local volunteer opportunities. He rules out suicide hotlines first because he discovered they didn't accept volunteers under the age of even if he had been old enough, he wouldn't have volunteered. It hit too close to home, and though he's been in that headspace, he doesn't think he could help others out of it. The animal shelters are crossed off next. He loves animals as much as the next person, but he's more interested in helping people. The homeless shelters, the hospital, the senior care homes. He looks at all of them, weighing the pros and cons before making his decision. He starts volunteering at a soup kitchen. Just for a few hours every Sunday. Just to test the waters and see if he likes it. Izuku discovers he doesn't like volunteering at the soup kitchen. He loves it. His first few times were rough because he was unsure of himself, but once he was settled, it was like he was meant to be there. It was a smaller kitchen ran by a couple who wanted to give people down on their luck a hot meal to look forward to. All types of people come through the doors for a cup of warm soup and soft pork bun. Izuku does his best to give them all encouraging smiles as he pours their bowls. The fourth month in, as the leaves outside turn brown, he begins to tentatively talk to the people that come to eat. Some he only sees once. Others are regulars, and Izuku learns. He learns that the man dressed in the nice suit lost his job and is trying to cut expenses in small ways as he tries to get back on his feet. They chat, and sometimes Izuku will look over his resume to make sure there aren't any mistakes. He learns that the family with the two little girls lost their home in a fire. They're staying at a nearby homeless shelter but think they've found a new place to live. If he's finished with his shift and they're still there, he'll play tag with the girls outside. It gives them a chance to feel like kids again, and their parents appreciate the small break. He learns that the older woman who cries quietly lost her husband in a villain attack 2 years back and never recovered from her grief. He sits next to her and listens to her talk about all the adventures she had with him. Often she is caressing an old, worn photo as she recounts her life. He learns that everyone who comes to this kitchen has lost something dear to them. Slowly, he begins to learn how to read people. He knows when the people he serves are just looking to vent about life. He figures out when someone is desperately looking for advice while trying to look put together. He learns when to push, when to pull, and when to leave people alone. The experience polishes his tongue and gives him a keen eye for when someone needs a smile and when they need a hand up. It also, surprisingly, gives him information on other things. People talk. Even at their lowest of lows, people talk. They tell Izuku what they hear, they tell him what they know. And they know what's going on in these streets better than anyone else. They tell him to avoid some petty criminal that breaks into cars. The man is violent when confronted, and it's not worth dying for. They tell him to not to go to certain places at certain times because that's where the drag deals happen and it's not something he should be caught up in. They complain about the gangsters trying to mug them when they already have nothing. They hold nothing back, gang names, monikers, physical descriptions, they tell him everything. They give him an inkling about how the darker side of society works. He reacts accordingly. He gives anonymous tips to the police if he thinks it has merit. Sometimes he gives a description of an individual, sometimes he tells them a location. He offers to walk anyone who feels nervous back to where they live. Despite his short stature, the regulars have seen him lift some of the heavier cooking utensils with ease. They know he is strong. They know he's strong, but they still worry for his safety. The taser he buys is more for their peace of mind than his. Another new experience. When he mentions he's quirkless, no one cares. They have bigger things to worry about than pitying or hating him. Some even light up and say, "Me too." In the 5th month, he finds a homeless man in the alleyway 2 blocks down from the soup kitchen. He's propped against a few overstuffed trash bags, sleeping. There are a few bottles scattered around him. His dark hair and clothes help him blend in to the point that Izuku almost misses him. Izuku lets him sleep. He asks the regulars about him and they tell him he's been there for a few weeks. An alcoholic, one man said sadly, stirring his soup. Just can't seem to get away from it. I've tried to talk to him, tried to get him to come to the shelter, but he just grunts and goes back to sleep. You can't help someone who doesn't want it. So Izuku doesn't talk to him, but he does leave food for him. And because it's getting cold, he buys a thick black scarf and some gloves. He never stays to see if these gifts are accepted, just drops them at the man's sprawled feet and moves on. Finally, in the 6th month, after the chill sets in, the man squints as Izuku sets down a styrofoam cup of soup, still hot from the stove. "You can stop. I didn't ask for your pity." A surprisingly clear voice makes Izuku pause and he looks at the man. Black eyes, devoid of any addiction, look back at him from behind messy hair. Food is a necessity to live. Pity has nothing to do with it. Izuku replies after a moment. "You don't know me." The man flashes a knife before hiding it again. "I could gut you right now and no one would know." "You could," Izuku agreed, "but I don't think you will." He doesn't mention that he has the high ground. Even if the man did lunge, Izuku has more than enough time and skill to get out of range. "Oh, so eager to believe that everyone is a good soul?" the man asks mockingly, and Izuku thinks he even has one eyebrow raised. "No, I've met some real Jargus," Izuku replied with a grin. "I don't think you're one though." "Why is that?" "The alley cats like you," Izuku said right as a feral cat made itself at home on the man's lap. "Don't get lost before I change my mind." The man's threat might have scared Izuku if he hadn't been petting a purring cat. Izuku gives him a salute and leaves him be. Aizawa, currently doing an undercover recon on a drag ring that he's been trying to break for months, is fondly exasperated. The soup was nice, but has no one told that kid that talking to strange homeless men is a bad idea? The days pass. The soup still comes. They don't talk much, but if Izuku hears that something illegal might be happening, he'll warn the man to steer clear of certain locations. He has no idea this is the exact information Aizawa needs to find the main base of the drag ring. It wasn't the biggest trigger bust he had done, but it was one less supplier off the streets. In the bitter cold of the 7th month, a girl commits suicide. Izuku didn't know her. She had gone to a different school. He only knows because he found morning flowers on his desk in science class. Next to them was a torn piece from that day's newspaper. There's a picture prominently featured. Kido Aiko was her name, written so small under the headline, it felt like they were trying to erase it from existence. Her face stares back him, eyes forlorn and determined, but he sees her exhaustion even through the black and white print. He's felt the emotion intimately himself. Under her name, under the headline, "Quirkless student commits suicide," someone wrote in thick black marker. "Are you going to join her?" Izuku doesn't cry. He doesn't cringe. Doesn't even SCK in a sharp breath. He's a little thrown because it's been a while since he's had to play a game like this, but he's more than willing to participate. He takes stock of the room. The teacher hasn't arrived yet and everyone is deathly silent. He realizes they're waiting for his reaction. One by one, he looks each classmate in the eye trying to discern who put this on his desk. The kids from homeroom are crossed off immediately. They had spread word of his verbose brutality, and even after all these months, still pale if he says something too sharply. Right now they look like they are survivors from a horror film who've just discovered they haven't escaped and are still in danger of dying some rather gruesome deaths. Others, kids who have heard and have heeded the warning, look worried and meet his gaze for a moment before looking away. In the end, it wasn't hard to find the culprit. He sits 2 rows over and 3 desks up. When he glances at Izuku and fails to hide his smirk, Izuku knows he did it. Izuku grabs the dimming items on his desk and walks over to the boy. "Hada-san," he greets. His smile is soft, his voice is quiet, and his eyes are cold as he holds the flowers and paper up. "I think you left these on my desk by accident." "Oh, my bad, Deku." Hada laughs, rubbing the back of his head in faux sheepishness, and Izuku sees where the marker had stained his hand. "I saw that in the morning paper and thought of you. Didn't know if you knew about your friend. Sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Izuku murmurs back. "I didn't know her, but I will mourn for her." "Oh, sorry. I thought all quirkless kids knew each other." A common misconception. It's one I see a lot, though there's one I see more than anything. What's that? The idea that having a quirk somehow makes you better than others. I see it so often it makes me sick. Quicker than Hada can blink, Izuku slams the flowers and paper onto his desk. The resounding noise makes everyone jump. Hada's desk has a dent in it. Oops. Izuku gives a little shrug and Hada looks at the indentation in shock. Don't know my own strength some days. He spies a book peeking out of Hada's bag and grabs it without much thought. "Oh, a prep book for Shiketsu? I didn't know you were going to take their entrance exams," Izuku said as he leans against the desk, casually flicking through the pages. "Why, my dad went. Trying to make it a tradition." Hada laughed, clearly uncomfortable with Izuku in his space. He flinches when Izuku snaps the book shut and drops it on his desk. "Wow, what a nice thing to try for." It is a good prep book." Although, Izuku leaned in and whispered quietly for only Hada to hear, "I don't think it will be enough. Not for you. You think a hero school would want someone who blatantly spits on the loss of life? Who laughs at it? I think you should rethink your school choice." "Che, you think you can scare me?" Hada snapped as Izuku steps away. "So what if everyone else here is scared of you? I'm not. You've got them all fooled into thinking you can ruin their lives, but I'm not gonna fall for it. You can't do anything to me." Izuku's smile turned into a grin. "If you say so, Hada-san, but you look scared, so I wonder if you really believe that. Don't worry though. I'm not going to harass you or anything like that." But, Izuku begins to walk back to his desk. "What you've done today, I'm going to make you regret it for the rest of your life." Their science teacher walked in right before Hada could retort. Later at Dagoba, Izuku takes the rage he hid so well out on the garbage. He's clearing it away at such a fast rate that All Might is impressed before he realizes something is wrong. It takes him a few tries to get Izuku to stop swinging sharp metal around and calm down enough to talk to him. "What's wrong, my boy?" It was said with such gentleness that Izuku feels the tears falling down his face and the sobs racking their way out of his throat before he can stop them. He feels All Might's hands guide him until they're both sitting on the sand. He explains everything through heaving breaths and wet cries. All Might sits next to him, rubbing his back as it all come bursting out of him like an overburdened dam. Finally he quiets. "I don't understand," he confesses after his hysteria has died off. He looks out at the ocean, but all he sees in his mind is a tired face in black and white. "What don't you understand? Why it still hurts so much? I should be used to it. No one's tried in months, but the other kids used to write things like that on my desk. You know, go kill yourself, useless, space waster, whatever they felt like writing. I didn't really care. It hurt a little, but I would clean it off and forget about it. I don't know if it's because he went out of his way to buy flowers or if it's because he used someone else's tragedy as a prop for his joke, but I can't let it go. Not this time. It shouldn't hurt me this much, but it does, and I dashed." Izuku cut himself off, rubbing at his face, frustrated that the tears are still coming. "I think it's okay to feel hurt. What that boy did was beyond cruel. If you would like, I could put in a word at Shiketsu. I could tell them what he did without mentioning your name. All Might offers, and Izuku's heart soars at the gesture. No, he says after a moment. He wants so badly to take All Might up on that, but it would cause too many questions if word got out that All Might used his influence to try and ban some kid he didn't know from a hero school. I don't want to get you involved in my messes. Besides, I already know what to do. Hada Shiro thinks he's untouchable because he has a quirk, but he's in for a surprise. Izuku's smile was grim. I'm going to dismantle his future without touching him. And for the first time in months, Yagi catches a glimpse of the boy he had talked to on the roof. He also takes note of the other boy's name. On the very small off chance that whatever Izuku has planned doesn't work, Yagi will take care of it, awkward questions be demanded. Yagi also contacts the funeral home that has Kido Aiko and anonymously pays for all expenses. Her family already has to bear the burden of burying their daughter. He won't stand for them having to pay for it. He also makes sure that Naomasa has someone look into her school thoroughly. He doesn't tell any of this to Izuku. The 8th month brings the early spring sun and the start of a retaliation. True to his word, Izuku did not harass or speak to Hada for the remainder of the year. Hada had been tense for a few weeks before falling into a false sense of security. Izuku overhears him bragging to his friends that Izuku was nothing but talk. He might have even been tempted to pull a similar stunt, but Izuku likes to think that the dent on Hada's desk made him think twice. Not that it matters. Hada has no idea he's already ruined. It was ridiculously easy to find dirt on him. Izuku didn't even have to dig deep, it was all there, proudly displayed on his social media. Videos, tweets, likes, and reposts of things no one trying for a hero school should ever in their right mind promote. Hada really doesn't like quirkless people. He leaves death threats and insults in the comments of anyone who says anything remotely nice about them. He also seems to have an issue with mutant quirks if his liberal use of the word freak in his internet rants is anything to go by. He toes the line of getting banned, going dark for a few days when admins get onto him, before coming back full force, never learning anything. It took less than a week for Izuku to seal Hada's fate in a Word doc filled with screenshots and links, but because they have so much time before exams, he decides to keep adding to it because Hada can't seem to stop himself from liking and spewing hateful things into the world. Since he was so proud of his beliefs, Izuku thought it was only fair to keep all of it on file for Shiketsu's administrators to review. Maybe if Hada had apologized at some point, Izuku would have backed off. Maybe if he had shown some remorse or guilt, Izuku would have extended an olive branch. But Hada's still having the time of his life on the internet, not having a care about who his words hurt, so turning him into a walking dead man is Izuku's only option. Halfway into the 9th month, as the flowers bloom, Izuku sends an email to Shiketsu High School. To whom it may concern, Hada Shiro, a 3rd year at Aldra Middle School, will be participating in your entrance exams. I have read your policy on bullying and discrimination and believe he would not be a good fit for your school. Please see the link doc for more details. If no action is taken, I and the rest of world will know where Shiketsu's standards for potential heroes lie. Thank you. Izuku uses an alt email he made at an internet cafe. He doesn't leave a name in the email. All he's done is put public information into a neat little document, but he's well aware this could still be considered sabotage because it is. Just to be petty, he forwards that same email to every hero school he could think of. Nedzu cackled when it popped up in his inbox. He recognizes the writer's style. He reminds Yagi that he wants to meet his protege. Yagi purposely coughs up blood to get out of the conversation. Shiketsu does their research and outright bans Hada Shiro from taking part in their entrance exam. He's probably the first person to receive a rejection letter before the exams even start. And not just from one school. Despite their rivalries, the hero schools of Japan want only the best and brightest. When something like this happens, they let the other schools know. At the beginning of the 10th month, as spring conquered winter, Hada comes to school looking like a ghost. His friends ask him what's wrong and he says nothing. He locks eyes with Izuku. Izuku never logged back into that new email he made, but he had been keeping an eye on Shiketsu_official. They had posted the other day reminding potential students that discrimination was not something they tolerated. Then and there Izuku knew his plan had worked. Izuku gives him a sweet smile and Hada's eyes widen in terror. He makes it through the day but stops showing up to school shortly after. The students whisper about it and side-eye Izuku, but that's it. There's no proof that Izuku did anything. There's another student's future that Izuku could destroy with the push of a button. But when Bakugo came back to school after the villain attack, he was oddly withdrawn. He would still yell, still explode, but over time it was happening less and less. He ignored Izuku for the rest of the year, though sometimes Izuku would catch him staring out of the corner of his eye. It wasn't the normal glare Izuku was used to feeling. In the rare moments that he caught Bakugo's expression, it was like he didn't quite know what to make of Izuku anymore. That said, Izuku was good for his word. Bakugo had left him alone and that was enough. The day before the entrance exam, Dagoba Beach was clean. Surprisingly, no dead bodies were found. Izuku watches as the sun rises above the water, making the waves glint and sand sparkle. He hears footsteps and soon All Might is standing next to him. "Congratulations, Midoriya," All Might said with a smile filled with pride. "You did it. You gave this beach a new life." "Thanks." Izuku blinked, turning away from the sunrise to look around. It hadn't quite sunk in that he succeeded. It felt a little surreal. "Do you think it will be enough, though? The entrance exam is tomorrow and, while I'm definitely stronger, I don't know if it will be enough." "Don't doubt yourself now, my boy. I believe you'll pass with flying colors." All Might's words warmed Izuku's heart. He was right. Izuku had worked too hard to stop now. He could do it. He could get into the hero. "Plus, there is, one thing I wanted to talk to you about." All Might continued, nervously tugging at his hair, avoiding Izuku's eyes. Izuku felt his mood plummet. Something was wrong. Did Yui see his application and deny him? Was this All Might's way of saying that Izuku did good but not good enough? Were the last 10 months for nothing after all? What if... No, Midoriya, it's nothing like that, I promise. All Might was quick to assure him. He had become an expert at decoding Izuku's muttering. "You're not in trouble. My apologies for making you think that. It's just that." All Might sighed before giving Izuku the news. "Principal Nedzu would like to talk with you today if you have time, and if you could bring some of your analysis journals, he would greatly appreciate it." All Might hugged him tightly. "I am so sorry. I did my best to distract him and keep you off his radar, but he's begun making vague suggestions about stopping by your apartment for a visit. Best to just bite the bullet and go see him." Izuku only had the slightest idea about Nedzu's reputation. The principal purposely kept himself shrouded in mystery, making it almost impossible to get reliable information on him. There were rumors, of course. Wild, unverified rumors about him and what he could do. So while Izuku wondered why it felt like he was about to attend his own funeral, he was also very, very intrigued. In his office, Nedzu began to giggle.